Okay. And I will share my screen. Give me 1 second. My computer is backfiring on me for a second. Okay, here we go. There we go. No, I won't move. Bear with me 1 second, everyone. I apologize for the technical difficulties here. Yeah. All right. So again, apologies for the delay. Welcome to the October 17th, 2022 Development Activities Meetings. Tonight, the RCOs in partnership with the Department of City Planning are the Hill District Consensus Group, the Hill Community Development Corporation, the Hill District Collaborative, and Uptown Partners. First, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Ose Akinlotan. I am a planning manager in the Strategic Planning Division within the Department of City Planning. I also serve as your neighborhood planner for the Greater Hill District. How to participate this evening? Presenters, please clearly describe the slides being presented. In order to assist those participating via audio to follow along with the presentation, if the host needs to change your status in the meeting, there may be a pause or reconnection circle. Do not restart Zoom, let it finish. After each presentation, we will invite questions and comments in this order. First, the chat is disabled, so the Q&A tool to type out your questions, and that is available throughout the duration of the presentation or the duration of the meeting. So you can enter questions at any time. The moderator, myself, and Assistant Director Watley will read out these questions in the order they are received. If you would like to speak your question out loud, you may tap the raise your hand button and the moderator will unmute attendees who have raised hands when ready. For voice call-ins, press *9 to raise your hand, and the moderator will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute you when ready. Finally, this meeting is being recorded to allow any stakeholders who were not able to attend to watch the proceedings at a later time. So what are development activities meetings? The Registered Community Organization Program is administered through the Department of City Planning to incorporate community input and development activities. Applicants requesting to go before the Zoning Board of Adjustment, the Planning Commission, the Historic Review Commission, and/or the Art Commission for public hearing, and whose projects meet certain thresholds, must coordinate with the RCO, or in this case, multiple RCOs, and the Department of City Planning to hold a development activities meeting to engage the community. A development activities meeting provides community stakeholders an opportunity to learn about proposals that may affect them and to share any concerns they may have before a project moves to public hearing. I, as your neighborhood planner and Assistant Director Watley, takes notes on the meeting, and completes a report, including a brief summary of the project as it is presented. The permission sought that prompted the need for a development activities meeting, and the questions asked by you as attendees and the answers they received. This report is provided to any relevant board or commission prior to hearings on the project so that they can understand the nature of the meeting and the project that was discussed. The development activities report is neutral and makes no conclusions. If you have strong feelings about the project, you should consider attending the board or commission meeting and testifying. That information will be provided to you. Additional notes. There are multiple RCOs applicable to reviewing tonight's projects. When there are 2 or more RCOs convening a development activities meetings, the RCO guidelines denote that the Department of City Planning hosts the development activities meeting in coordination with your registered community organizations. Prior to the project presentation, we would like to offer each registered community organization a chance to speak about their work and about any engagement they've had on each of these projects. First, we will have the Hill District Consensus Group. Carol.
I can go through it for Carol if she can't hear.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so yes, I'm Bonnie Young from the Hill District Consensus Group. And could you go to the next slide, Ose? Just a little bit of our history. In relationship to the Lower Hill process, the consensus group has been active for a long time. We did the CBA work in 2007 through 9 and won the CBA. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next one. Next, please. I figure you all don't want to know all this stuff. I thought Jubilee Kitchen was going to be part of the discussion today, so I included them in our PowerPoint presentation. We have not had contact with the Jubilee Kitchen in regard to their project. Next slide, please. And these are the things that I was telling you before. We scored the project. We looked at the Lower Hill development in 2 components, the parking garage and the PLDP amendment. We had that meeting in collaboration with the Hill District Collaborative on October 3rd. Next slide, please. So the scores that the parking garage got was, we broke it down into residents and folks that were non-residents. They got 2 out of 7. I mean, 2.7 out of 4 for the resident score, 2.9 out of 4 for the overall score. And there's just a couple of the breakdowns around the particular goals. We gave a more detailed report to city planning. Next slide, please. And then in regard to the PLDP amendment, we got a 2.5 out of a possible 4 for the residents score, and a 2.8 out of a possible 4 when we include everybody, including people who do not live or are born on the Hill. So that's who we are in relationship to this project. Thanks, Ose.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next, we will have the Hill CDC. Coach Emerline.
Yes, Ose, these aren't my slides. Can you come back to me? I'm not sure.
Sure. Bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
All right, Gail from the Hill District Collaborative.
Hello, my name is Gil Lowe. I'm the board chair of the Hill District Collaborative. Next slide. So the Hill District Collaborative is a nonprofit organization, registered community organization representing the Hill District. We were formed by a group of residents and Hill District business owners who wanted a clear community development review process with a high level of community engagement. And we became a City of Pittsburgh registered community organization earlier this year. Next slide. So our vision for the Hill is for the Hill to be redeveloped into a safe, thriving community that maintains its historic culture. And our mission is to inform, engage, and connect Hill District residents, landowners, business owners, and nonprofits so that the community's interests and positions can influence decisions on real estate development, economic development, and public safety. And our purpose is to cultivate a collaborative forum that is inclusive and respects all community members. Next slide. So our focus areas are to promote and support mixed income, affordable housing development, promoting and supporting affordable home ownership, and to promote and support clean and economic energy projects to allow our residents and business owners to take advantage of some of the cost savings that result from the implementation of renewable energy technologies. And we also work to facilitate the connection between African-American business owners and real estate developers. So as Bonnie had mentioned, at the October 3rd community meeting, we had the community score two projects, the Block E project where there's a planned music venue and 900 space garage. And there were 49 scorecards submitted, and the overall score was 2.9 out of 4 is how the community scored that project. And the residents, because we wanted to get that extra layer of transparency to show how many voters were residents versus all the other buckets, which included Hill District business owners, people who are born and raised in the Hill. You know, there's been a lot of displacement. So there's a lot of people who or have a strong connection to the Hill, but currently don't reside on it. So the residents scored 2.7 out of 4. And some of the comments that were provided for the garage and music venue was that it was a good support for the F&B Tower, which is the anchor for the Laurel Hill development. And another mention was that there was no mention of sustainability in the project. So hopefully the Laurel Hill development team will speak on the sustainability aspects of the parking garage and lab and music venue. Also, it was stated that the curtain call was a plus, but there need be affordable housing in other phases, and to make sure that Hill businesses were included in all phases. And another comment was that it was difficult to see the connection between the residential housing section on the scorecard and the parking garage and music venue, which is a commercial development. And so we take that feedback in to see how in future scoring for projects, if it's a commercial development, to really push the developer to show that connection that they're addressing the community's need for housing, whether it be grants or some funding or a parking tax diversion fund, however, to make sure they highlight that so that the community can see that connection. And there were other comments, but we just wanted to grab a few that were key and bring it to the attention of everyone that's attending it down. Next slide, please. And also the community scored the amendment to the preliminary land development plan. And that score overall was a 2.8 out of 4. And the residents scored it 2.5 out of 4. And some of the feedbacks that we got on that was that the project is important as it's uplifting the community, and that honoring Frankie Pace is good, but they wanted to know, are there others being honored? And there was some concern about the proposal to remove public streets and replace with private alleys. And there was a comment of the need for more opportunities for Black developers in the Lower Hill. And another comment was that the need for a focus on veterans of African descent and the need for information and writing and dissemination of the campaign to inform low-income residents. So this feedback, some of it was addressed towards the developer, and then other things were good feedback on the scorecard that the community used. We'll certainly use that to improve, and we hope that the developer addresses the community's comments here as well. And that's all I have for the Hill District Collaborative.
Thanks, Gail. Bear with me 1 second. Trying to reorganize.
And good evening, everybody. This is Sharonda Watley. I'm the Assistant Director of Strategic Planning for the Department of City Planning. I just wanted to pop in here really quickly to say hello. And also, while Osei is updating the slide presentation, I really want to thank everybody for coming and joining us tonight. It looks like we have about 108 participants, which is really huge, and it's really great to see so many residents and businesses and other stakeholders here this evening. Because we do have such a large number of participants, and now we're up to about 110, we do ask that we keep some of our comments to a very high level, just so that we can get to everybody through the presentation and also through the Q&A. And so I know that we have someone from the mayor's office wanting to speak and share about some other events coming up in the city. And we also have two other RCOs that are also going to be sharing some comments once Osei has the presentation back up. So again, I want to make sure that we keep our comments to very high level, but very clear and to the point, just because we have so many folks. And we're also up to about 115 participants now. So just to keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, Uptown Partners, Sabrina.
I'm ready to go.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
All right. I am Sabrina Miller. I'm the Real Estate and Development Program Manager with Uptown Partners of Pittsburgh. Our Executive Director is Dr. Brittany McDonald, and our Community Project Manager is Dashni Johnson. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so Uptown Partners, very brief summation of us. Uptown Partners of Pittsburgh is a community-based organization of residents, institutions, and business owners working together to build a vibrant, sustainable, and just community for all. We accomplish this through the implementation of the Uptown Eco-Innovation District Plan, which is the city's first adopted neighborhood plan, and focuses on 4 facets of community development, which include community, infrastructure, development, and mobility. We are the RCO for the Uptown neighborhood of the Greater Hill District. So our developer interaction, the only one we're covering right now that is in our service area will be Jubilee Kitchen. And so they presented early plans in July of 2021. They had their formal real estate design and development meeting in August 2022. The RED meetings are our RCO process where we vet development proposals, provide feedback until developments are in alignment with community goals. So they did that this summer. And our committee unanimously supports the project. One of the main considerations, though, is lighting issues to be addressed and committed to. We discussed those, but they were just not a part of the rendering, so we weren't able to go into detail of how that's going to be implemented into the project. You can go to the next slide. So this one was pretty straightforward. The development is going to, it's really about expanding the actual building, and through that, they will be able to expand and improve on the services that they provide. Some of the major things, safety being one of them that this project addresses. Wyandotte and Dorad streets are key areas of the Uptown area that are safety concerns and public health concerns as well. There's a lot of our homeless populations here kind of gravitate to those areas because they aren't as visible. So we've had that sort of negatively affects the services that Jubilee Kitchen has been able to provide. Lighting is poor and low up that street and corridor. This project would address that. And I think that just the overall development of the site will help to deter some of the perceived or actual crime that takes place in that area. The programming is a big portion of this. It's so tied into the development. We absolutely support the efforts and the services that Jubilee provides, not only to Uptown residents, but Hill District, neighborhood-wide, and also throughout the city of Pittsburgh. I touched on that. So that's one of the major highlights of this project and why we've supported it. And there's also a public art component, which is always great to have in there. I spoke to Mark at length about opportunities to collaborate with the Uptown Arts Committee to see more public art, whether that's commissions or free programming that Uptown Partners helps facilitate throughout this project to have it just more vibrant and speak to the establishment of arts as a part of Uptown's identity. You can go to the next slide. And there's my contact information. There's only one more slide, and it just celebrates the fact that Uptown Partners is in its 5th year implementing the Uptown Eco-Innovation District Plan. And that's all for me. I'll say thank you.
So, Marimba, did you want to provide any slides tonight?
I'm sorry, yeah, sure. I can just share my screen if that's easier.
Hello. Remember, were you able to send those slides to OSA?
Yes, they're sent, but I'm gonna just share them since we're here. My name is Miranda Lyons. I am President and CEO of the Hill Community Development Corporation. And I'm really happy to be amongst fellow community builders here, as usual. You may also know Chavesha Cheney. She's our Policy and Programs Associate. She is actually on site at the Blakey Center with probably about another 30 to 40 residents who are watching live as we try to accommodate everyone's needs within the neighborhood. The Hill CDC is a place-based organization focused on equitable redevelopment and revitalization of the historic Hill District, where cultural legacy meets future innovation. We're celebrating 35 years of operation. We work in partnership with residents and stakeholders to promote, implement, and create strategies that connect plans, policies, and people to drive compelling community development opportunities in the Greater Hill District. We focus on people, place, and policy. We do that through real estate development, focusing on our commercial core and home ownership, economic development programs such as business and entrepreneurship, home ownership preparation, arts and culture, and of course, policy and planning, specifically promotion of equitable development and neighborhood planning. About the Hill District's unified voice on community development called the Development Review Panel. The Development Review Panel is a two-step process focused on ensuring that the community master plan is met. The DRP was created in 2014 to streamline community review on behalf of the Hill District when it comes to planning and development. The DRP model was designed by the Hill CDC after many discussions and negotiations with the Hill District Consensus Group. An agreement was signed by the Hill CDC and the Hill District Consensus Group in 2014 to ensure that we could have streamlined review of community development in the Hill District. And this is the signed agreement with myself, board chair at the time, and Carl Redwood, who's still a member and I believe chair of the Consensus Group. As the process was strengthened and proven, additional organizations were added as steering and appointing members to ensure collaboration and partnership. As of today, there are 9 Hill District organizations responsible for the 11-person body appointed to the Development Review Committee. Those organizations you can see listed here along the bottom: the Ujima Collective, the Hill CDC, the Hill District Consensus Group, the Hill District Education Council, the Center That Cares, Hill District Ministers Alliance, Uptown Partners, Macedonia Face, and the Neighborhood Resilience Project. The requirements of the Development Review Panel and the community review process ensure that quality projects are in alignment with the Greater Hill District Master Plan and, in the case of the Lower Hill District, the CSIP. Anyone can check the status of a project at any time by logging on to www.hilldistrict.org/DRP. The Hill CDC also has an open door policy in the event that someone has questions or needs help accessing a computer. Here's just a screenshot of what our website looks like, and you can see all of the projects listed there. You can see the approved projects, the projects that are under review, the declined projects, all of the materials that were submitted to ensure that the community has an opportunity to not just hear about developments in one meeting where it's a lot of information to digest, but also so that they can actually do a deep dive at home if they choose. The first step of our process is a focused deep dive review and scoring at the committee level. That's the Development Review Panel committee. The second part of the process, if the plan aligns with the master plan, and in the Lower Hill District's case, the CSIP, is to advance the plan for the community to review and vote themselves. Each and every resident is allowed to vote. The reason why the two-step process is important is because it's very difficult for residents to grasp the complexity of a project in a 30-minute, 1 hour, even 2-hour meeting. These projects oftentimes are worked on for more than 2 to 3 years by developers, if not more. And so we believe that the appropriate way to ensure that the residents are protected and that the Hill District is protected in particular is by doing that first level review. And when they score 80% or higher, then a letter of support is conferred. If they scored at the community level and combined with the community voting, we confer a letter of support to elected officials as well as appropriate agencies, perhaps the Housing Authority, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, or other applicable agencies. If the cumulative score of the project is less than 80%, the developer is to work with the Hill CDC first, then the DRP as the committee to better align their project with community goals. The focus is to help the plan achieve 80% at the committee level or a passing grade for the CSIP. And when we're talking about the Lower Hill, and I'm only bringing that up is because the Lower Hill is on the agenda tonight. If the developer chooses to abandon, very important, if the developer chooses to abandon, disengage from, or disregard the community review process, then a letter of non-support is sent on behalf of the DRP to the appropriate agencies and elected officials. Only in this case will the Hill CDC publicly advocate improvement for the plan on behalf of Hill District residents. In other words, as long as the developer is working within the process and working with the community, they will have our support within that process. When and if they abandon that process, we take on the position of what the issues were with the plan and why it is not quite ready to be approved. The evaluation criteria are clear. They're outlined in our Greater Hill District Master Plan to build upon the African American cultural legacy, to develop housing without displacement, to provide economic development, to make the Hill District a green and well-designed community, and to improve mobility, transportation, and parking in the Hill District. When talking about the Lower Hill District, like we will tonight, it's not just about minority, women, business, enterprise inclusion, although that's very important. It's also about workforce development, job inclusion, and local hiring. It's also about housing inclusion and home ownership, and wealth building initiatives, and coordinated community development strategies, and cultural and community legacy initiatives. I want to lift up the coordinated community development strategies, because that is what will ensure that what happens on the Lower Hill District ultimately does not displace and reduce the quality of life for the residents who are living here, mostly through essentially hiking up the market such that it is not an affordable community. We believe that development is a good thing. This process is developed to ensure that it protects the residents who are here. What's been our interaction with Jubilee Kitchen on their current development? It's been positive. They submitted their project on July 29th of 2022. The DRP committee scored the Jubilee Soup Kitchen project, and it passed our DRP committee with a score of 89%, a B. That is step one, it is complete. Step two, the developer will be invited to attend the next community meeting to be voted on by each and every Hill District resident. Stay tuned for the date. Again, I just want to lift up that two-step process. You're not going to get a developer who's presenting to you in 1 hour where you're supposed to make these really critical decisions. The Development Review Panel Committee has already done a deep dive review. Now we need your input. If they score a cumulative 80%, we will, of course, confer a letter of support to all of the city agencies as well as applicable partners. Thank you to the Jubilee Kitchen for ensuring that you respect the Hill District's unified voice on community development, our tried and true community review process. The project, the Development Review Panel, by the way, has scored over 40 projects. Now a little bit about our engagement with the Lower Hill Block E, with the Lower Hill Development Team specific to Block E and the Preliminary Land Development Plan. Very important. Okay, so Block E, a little bit of context. In fall of 2019, the Penns were facing the potential loss of a portion of their development rights and attempting to renegotiate terms of their development rights with the Urban Redevelopment Authority and the Sports and Exhibition Authority. As a part of those negotiations, specific agreements and terms were agreed to in an October 2019 deal with PAR, that's the Penguins, the URA, and the SEA. A deal was reached in October 2019 with the following commitments. Here's just a cover of the screen of the cover sheet to the agreement. This is the execution version, which means that it was executed. Here were the things that were required by the URA at that time when they were negotiating the terms of Block E and Block B and Block A, I believe, but certainly Block E and Block B. So the URA terms were option E, shall. Shall is a very important legal term. It means that you must. Option E is the Penguins and Buccini Polling Group, if they are the developer for this particular site, whoever the developers are, but specifically in this case, the option is PAR, shall fund the construction of the City of Pittsburgh's Rescue 2 station and or the City EMS 14 station to a mutually agreed upon location within the Block E structured parking. We do not know the status of that particular commitment. We believe that they have made progress in that regard. I do not know that there are any issues. The city perhaps can speak to that tonight. I think it's important because it is a requirement of the terms that were agreed to. They are to deliver to the URA or its designee up to 1,200 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor of the Block E structured parking facing Wiley Avenue. That space is generally referred to as the Catapult space, because at the time they were in discussions with Catapult, which is a Hill District, or excuse me, which is a citywide organization that is focused on retail incubation for Black-owned businesses. They have moved that space to Logan Street. Tonight, I believe they're going to tell you that they've moved it back to Wiley, and I'm hoping that they have the renderings to demonstrate that they've moved it back to Wiley, because we don't want our Black business incubator to be tucked around on Side Street. We want it to be exactly where it was committed to be, which is Wiley Avenue. The Block E redeveloper shall require any entertainment or music venue operator to coordinate with the New Granada Theater on programming. That means they must do that as it relates to the URA terms. Those conversations are very early on. In order for them to get through those conversations prior to going to city planning and then to the URA and the SEA, it's a very tight timeline. That has not yet been delivered on. I am hopeful, I am positive, things could work out. As of today, it's a no. URA terms relative to capitalizing, they shall capitalize 50% of the owner payment for the Greater Hill District Reinvestment Fund. I do not know the status of that. That's a question for the URA or Councilman Lavelle, who's on the URA board and who's familiar with this process, and the mayor's office as well. And last but certainly, actually this is not last, but it's an important one, the PAR shall fund the rehab of Ammon, including but not limited to the installation of a multi-purpose space for community celebrations and the deck hockey refurbishment of playground and basketball courts, and the development of rec-to-tech programming space for the benefit of Hill District children and families. Discussion shall include Macedonia Church of Pittsburgh and the City of Pittsburgh. As of right now, they have partially funded the rec-to-tech programming space. There has been no refurbishment of the playgrounds or the basketball courts, and I imagine some of the other things. And I know that the communications with Macedonia, I cannot speak for the City of Pittsburgh, have been limited. So we need to see them make good on the things that they committed to prior to showing up at the URA, which their plan is to brief the URA in November. The URA shall, the option is shall work with Partner for Work to locate a first source center on or near the option premises, produce pre-employment and job training for contractors, minority businesses, and for hospitality jobs within the premises. Well, the premises aren't there, but I'm going to give them a star for this one because they've done some work around some of the training. However, the hospitality training is lagging. And if we're talking about building a 4,500 person venue on the Lower Hill District, that's a lot of jobs. And we really need to see that training happening as quickly as possible. So I'm going to give a star, but I do think that it's important to note that the hospitality training is still something that I believe is underway relative to events and venue space and not hotels, although that's important too, because that would be on a block adjacent to F&B. Another, the optionee shall fill any remaining funding gaps as of the date of this term sheet for the curtain call project, and they shall assist the seller with the design and installation of the curtain call. That has not happened. There's been a lot of talk over the past 10 years about the curtain call being funded. Unfortunately, it has not yet been funded by the developer. It not only has not been funded, but it was moved from the community selected location in front of PPG Paints Arena to a new location, which I will discuss a little later in the preliminary land development plan feedback. So in January of 2020, the Lower Hill development team submitted to the DRP with their president and CEO, Chris Buccini, Amici Aka, who is a partner to Buccini Polling Group, Bill Siddick, who is the attorney, and Boris Kaplan, who is the VP of Development and Acquisition. Those were the representatives for Buccini Polling Group at the time that that submission happened. Kevin Ackland and Craig Dunham were the representatives for the Pittsburgh Penguins. On February 5th of 2020, Block E received a passing score of 89%, a B. The developer informed the Hill CDC and DRP that they were not prepared for a full presentation by the time the quarterly meeting came around due to COVID. Now, if you remember, things got shut down in March. Our quarterly meeting would have been about that time. The Penguins were, quite frankly, as well as Buccini Polling Group, quite frankly, working very hard and urgently to improve their score on Block G1, which had fallen beneath the 80% threshold. So Block G1 is where the current structure is being built. They did not get to the 80% threshold. They knew that that was the first project. And then Block B was just kind of on the back burner in part because of COVID. New Buccini Polling Group representatives were hired since the initial scoring, including Bomani House and Kimberly Ellis. The Hill CDC, EMC, City, and URA requested that the team complete the two-step DRP more recently. This is now that they're trying to come back, now that they're trying to get through the process. BPG presented again to the DRP on July 6, 2022 to provide an update on the development plans for Block E. The DRP deliberated on the development project and suggested that the developer resubmit to the DRP due to the extensive changes on the development site, in addition to 2 years elapsing between the last time the proposal was reviewed. Buccini Polling Group and PAR have refused to resubmit to the development review panel, although they promised to honor the development review panel process in their last testimony before city planning when they were trying to secure support for Block G1. A link to that video can be found at hilldistrict.org/live. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find this video where there's a commitment from Buccini Polling Group essentially saying, we will honor the process, we will come back to the process. There was an attack on the process, we felt, but we can get past things because we want to see our community develop. But it's important to understand that the commitment to work through the existing process was not met. Not only has the Lower Hill development team not honored the DRP, they have worked feverishly to form another RCO in hopes of securing a more favorable score. This was an intentional attempt to undermine our unified table in the Hill District and threatens the RCO ordinance's goal of equity. Many of the founding members of one of the RCOs are small business owners. Many of them can be found providing testimony for Block G1 at the same link. While we are in support of our Black business community, and the Hill CDC in particular has arguably secured more opportunity than most organizations in the city for Black businesses, we do not believe that business opportunities should be exchanged for the welfare of the Hill District. Finally, Block E continues to fail the CSIP's comprehensive 6 goals, which would be addressed in part with. And I want to say comprehensive 6 goals. It's very important to understand that what you're going to hear tonight from them, I can assure you, is very high MBE numbers, like numbers that will blow your mind, right, around MBEs. That's great, but that's not the whole of the CSIP. The CSIP is 6 focus areas. I went through those earlier. Remember coordinated community development, remember wealth building, remember cultural and legacy initiatives. All of these things are a part of the CSIP, as well as a revenue stream that's independent from tax dollars. So let's talk about what they can do to meet the CSIP goals. A formal and signed agreement regarding community jobs from Live Nation and other event operators must be secured. Demonstration of minority ownership share must be supported. Here's the thing, we didn't just fight for jobs, we also fought for ownership. And the last time we explored what the ownership looked like on the Block G1, the tower that's being built, it was a minority owner from out of town. There was no opportunity for local Black ownership. It was a concern, it remains a concern. And also, we just don't really know much about that person. A revenue stream beyond the LRTA and parking tax diversion, which are your diverted tax dollars, must be secured. We have a suggestion on how to do that, but I'll get to that in a second. Block E should also fully support the completion of New Granada Square in creative ways and partnerships beyond the discussion phase. Revenue streams can be a $2 surcharge per car parked and a $2 surcharge for tickets for Hill District community development. Here's an example of what that could produce. The Lower Hill District is proposing we're proposing a $2 per car and $2 per ticket surcharge. Forget that error there. If we did that at PPG Paints Arena, where you can see there are 19,758 seats. You will see that a ticket that's sold at $50 generates just under $1 million. If we were to do a $2 surcharge, the ticket wouldn't be $50, they wouldn't get $48. The developer wouldn't get $48, they would get $50, right? They would charge $52 and the community would get that other $2. So that would generate almost $40,000 for the community, okay? So it's very important to understand that. The other thing that's important to understand, and this is directly from the option agreement, and I want to keep it in front of us as a community, that the land on the Lower Hill District is being sold for $10 per tract, $10 per tract. In the Middle Hill District, parcels are being sold for $20,000 above to community-based organizations and Black-owned businesses. We can't forget that equity has to be at the heart of this, and that there must be fulfillment of the CSIP. This is the agreement that was signed back in 2014, and several of those commitments remain unmet. The PLDP involvement with the Hill CDC. I'm going to first say that that started at the beginning of time. We can laugh a little about this, but it was very early on. But it was maybe 2012 or 2011, 2012 or 2013 when we first started those conversations. But I'm going to wrap this up in just 5 minutes. What is a preliminary land development plan? A preliminary land development plan is a master plan for specially planned districts and includes details for infrastructure, development patterns, landscape design, and architectural details, and is accompanied by zoning text that is specific to the specially planned district. Here's the PLDP for the Lower Hill. This is what they are revising. They are revising the text and the governing document for this entire site. What's in the PLDP? Things like building heights, curbs, streets, all of those kinds of things are located in the preliminary land development plan. The Hill CDC facilitated all early stages of community conversations regarding the PLDP. As early as 2012, conversations were held and extensive community engagement took place. Hill CDC staffed and facilitated the PLDP and Street Grid Committee and held large community meetings over months. Many community members participated. Here's just one example of one PLDP meeting that was held. On behalf of these committees, the Hill CDC issued an extensive memo to the Penguins outlining the community's desires for the PLDP prior to issuance of the active plan. That was back in 2013 and 2014. The chief concern, and this is what we need to take away as a community, the chief concern was to ensure that the City Planning Commission adheres to its review criteria by ensuring positive socioeconomic impact, protecting the environment, and the public good. This language is clearly and expressly stated in the City and Zoning Code. Here's a letter from Councilman Lavelle back from 2014, urging the Pittsburgh Penguins to attach the CSIP to their preliminary land development plan. Why do we want it attached? The preliminary land development plan, if it is referenced directly and has stronger language regarding the CSIP, it gives the City Planning Commission the opportunity and the power to support the community's socioeconomic goals, and it would help to protect a vulnerable community and promote equity. On Friday, the Lower Hill Executive Management Committee for the Lower Hill, just this past Friday, voted to support that request in these upcoming revisions. And we asked for the mayor and the Planning Commission and City Planning Department to support that fully as well. Here's the lawsuit that we filed last time they did not attach that plan. And this lawsuit essentially is what earned us the LRTA as a community. We don't want to go through that again. We really just want them to attach the CSIP and to increase and give the City Planning Department the highest level of enforcement available to them so that they can support the community in review. This is ultimately, however, what established the LRTA. You're going to hear a lot about the LRTA tonight, and you're going to hear a lot about the parking tax diversion. But I want you to remember, and I want you to know that those are your tax dollars at work. What we need from the development team is an additional revenue stream that's privately funded and wouldn't even really be out of their pocket. Again, going back to the $2 surcharge. We need those community jobs, and we need to also make sure that they hold a community charrette for the Hill CDC and the DRP and the other RCO groups here tonight to ensure support of moving the curtain call. There have been no discussions today publicly amongst the community for moving the curtain call. However, the Penguins tonight are going to propose that we move the curtain call to Wiley and Crawford Street. That may be okay, but it has to be a conversation before you change the master plan document. We need them to ensure traffic and environmental studies to determine impacts. We need them to incorporate inclusionary zoning for affordable housing and minority business inclusion. They may even be able to use the Choice Housing Project that is coming up over the next couple of months, an application to the federal government. We need them to reevaluate maximum building heights. I have heard from a lot of you in the community that you didn't know that the Block G1 building was going to be so tall. Well, guess what governs the height that that building can be? You got it, the PLDP. So if we want that to be revised, it has to be done now. Otherwise, they will be able to continue to max out those building heights. Any changes,
Hello.
the last thing, I'm on my last slide.
Please do. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any changes that are also made to the zoning text with the preliminary land development plan should not conflict. And this is really nuanced, but it's very important. There are a lot of promises being made, but development is not just about the community engagement part, it's also about the technical piece. And what this is the technical piece. Any changes that are being made should not be at conflict with the public commitments that are being made. So in other words, I know that there have been some conversations based on a news article that came out today with Bethel AME about them wanting to participate or own the land that was taken from Big Bethel or Mother Bethel, some of you may call it. If that is happening and if that is the case, then these changes should not foreclose on that opportunity. If that is not the case, then that's a conversation between Bethel, the community, and the development team. But I just want to say we have to be focused on those kinds of things. Finally, I ask you to be social with the Hill City, so you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as LinkedIn, and sign up for our e-list. Thank you so much. I appreciate your patience.
Okay, so we are supposed to have a short presentation from Rebecca Rinaldo regarding the budget input session. So Rebecca, you can take it away, and then we will move on to Dario McAfee for Jubilee Kitchen.
Thank you, Osei. Presentation is actually a generous term for what I'm about to do, which is just a quick 1-minute plug to you all about a meeting that the mayor's office is hosting in your community this coming Sunday, October 23rd, 2 to 4 p.m. at Ebenezer Baptist Church. So the mayor is excited to be coming to the Hill to talk specifically about our first budget proposal as an administration. And I know that most of us are not generally inclined to want to talk about the budget, but I implore you all to reconsider, because the budget is actually what guides all of the city's work. So if you want to know kind of what's going to get done in your community from a capital perspective, you look at the budget document to see if it's been funded. So if you want to advocate either for something that we have proposed in our preliminary draft budget before we send the final budget to City Council in November, please come to this meeting. If there's something in that proposal that you feel didn't quite hit the mark with regards to your needs and your community's needs, come out to this meeting, let us know. We want to talk to you all about it. I'll put information, I guess, in the chat. Osei, you might have to help me figure out how to do that. But again, that's this Sunday, October 23rd. Mayor Gainey and a whole host of our team will be at Ebenezer Baptist Church from 2 to 4 p.m. And that's all I got. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. I will pass this over to Dario McPhee from Indivina.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So again, my name is Dario McPhee, Indivina Associates Architects, and I am here today along with Mark Ladner, executive from Jubilee Kitchen, and we are about to discuss the expansion and renovation of the existing Jubilee Kitchen. So basically, Mark approached us along with some other firms to do a feasibility study to study the existing building and kind of figure out whether it was fit to be torn down, or whether it was fit to actually reuse or be torn down and even expand on it. we kind of went through a lot of iterations, but ultimately we decided that it made more sense to keep the existing building and just add on to it. And so as a result, we won the feasibility study. Mark could probably talk about the other designs that were proposed, but we won that. And so from there, we started designing the building, trying to figure out how to make it work with its context, work with the programming that Mark wants, and try to make sure that they would be able to afford it and raise the funds for it. So I'll let Mark tell you a little bit more about Jubilee Association.
Thanks, Dario, and good evening, everyone. Just real quick, Jubilee has been in existence since 1979 in this same building, which was an abandoned building at the time. And our primary purpose is to serve hot breakfast and lunch and provide takeout meals for our guests. But we do a lot more than that. We have a food pantry, we have a clothing room, we hand out personal hygiene items. We help people financially with rent and utility assistance. We also help connect our guests with other services as needed. The building we're in is just, it's in disrepair. It's not an attractive building, and it really hinders what we can do for the people that live in and around Jubilee, because the building just doesn't function well. So I think what Dario is going to present to you guys tonight can greatly expand what we can do for people living below the poverty line in and around our building.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, so main team members, Indovina Associates Architects and Macero Construction Group. They're not on the call right now. So after the feasibility study, we basically put out bids to get CMs for this project. And so we went through several different CMs, and ultimately Macero Construction Group was chosen simply because they addressed certain things that the other ones did not, the main thing being diversity. So Mark can kind of attest to this, but that was the key thing we were looking for. There were some other things, such as we needed to make sure that any construction that was done for this project did not entirely shut down Jubilee Kitchen, because they need to be able to continue to service their guests. So here's Indovina Associates Architects. So that's myself. I'm the project architect for Jubilee. This is my boss, Rob Indovina. And here's Macero. This is a project team. The project has been going on for quite some time. So some of these faces are actually not still on the project, but they are dedicated, and they have been dedicated to giving us good feedback and good constructive criticism. So again, diversity approach, they really detailed what they're trying to get out of this process from a diversity standpoint. So they touch on team management plan, communication, composition, having a plan, basically making sure that from a composition standpoint, team members are diverse, the entire environment is diverse. One of the things they actually committed to the project, they committed that they would be able to get 30 to 35% WMB participation. They acknowledged that they can even get a little bit more if additional diverse businesses, including veteran-owned, LGBTQ-owned, and small businesses could be included. Existing conditions. All right, so here is the existing site for Jubilee Kitchen. So if you look to the left in the blue property line, that's the existing childcare center. That's not a part of this project scope. So the long rectangular building, that is the existing Jubilee Kitchen. So if you look closely, you can see there are three forms. The long form at the front, that's practically the existing building. I think it was the first building that was built, we believe. And then the other two forms, we believe, were annexes that later came with the building. To the right of the building, we have an existing park. I know there are some safety concerns with that park as it is. A lot of folks, they kind of gather there, they participate in illegal activity there. So a lot of what we're trying to do with this building is not only expand programming, but basically create as safe of an environment as possible for this project. So here are some existing photos for the building. As you can see, it's kind of an eyesore right now. A lot of the services are exposed. There's not a lot of light, natural lighting coming into the building. And I think a part of that was because, there's a safety concern. And so I think what the point was to try and board up the building as much as possible so that, make it as secure as possible, perceivably, and then I think, again, services were not really handled as sensitively as it could be to kind of have this clean facade. If you look to the right a little bit, you also see a dumpster. So safety, I'm gonna keep on touching on this, but safety is a big issue. We have basically no sidewalk beyond that dumpster, and the dumpster is to the street right now. So here you get to see, again, there's no sidewalk. We have Wyandotte, and there's absolutely no safe passage to the building. So if I'm trying to donate to Jubilee, whether it be clothing, food, whatever it is, I basically park to the right along the street, and then now I have to basically walk into the middle of the street and walk to the entrance of Jubilee. So there is absolutely no safe route to this. So our design tries to address this. And we're looking at Jubilee from 5th Avenue. As you can see, more of the same, the exposed surfaces on the outside of the building. You could start to see where cars are parked on the side of the street. If it's wet and rainy, it's kind of hard to get to the front, to the entrance of the building. Here we're looking from 5th again. More of the same, more of the same. And this is just a photo from the early child care center. So the design. Okay, so again, here, the biggest thing, safety. So what we try to do is we try to provide off-street parking. Now, keep in mind, off-street parking is not required in the district. However, what's really important is we need to have places for persons who are handicapped, persons who have donations, to be able to safely access the building. And so we provide 1 handicap space, and we provide 4 regular spaces, parking spaces. We also provide a loading zone. That's pretty important. So deliveries would be able to be handled from that loading zone. We also push back the garbage, the waste receptacle, all the way at the back of the property. And then if you can see right there, our addition is pretty small. It's not a big footprint. I think it's maybe like 1,500 square feet. But the purpose of this addition is predominantly to provide access to that second level, because currently the building is not accessible. So what we've done, we've been able to take that expansion or that addition for the building, make it accessible. We've added an elevator. We've also added some restrooms in there, much needed. And we're trying to maximize the site as much as possible and the building as much as possible. So safety again, here we have a lighting diagram. So what this is showing the foot candles as it relates to the site. So I don't know if you could see my marker, but here's where that lighting would be. And that site lighting basically shows, I think 1 foot candle is the minimum that we need. Don't hold me to that because I'm not a civil engineer, but it's 1 foot candle. And this diagram does not take into consideration that we have building lighting. So this predominantly deals with the parking. Okay, so as we go to our ground level, so the existing ground level as it stands is not efficient. So what we've done, we've kind of stripped it, we've demoed the existing layout, and we're providing a nice clean layout. And it basically houses the same program, but what we've done is we've made it more efficient. And to the right, where we have our addition, that's where we have the administration entrance, and that administration entrance has access to the soup kitchen. And then we have our elevator that'll be able to allow accessibility to the building, also be able to allow loading to the second level. And what we've also added restrooms in that addition. So folks would be able to take a shower, they'd be able to use the restrooms as needed. As we get up to the second level, this will, actually, I'll take it back to the first level. So at the first level, there's a clothing room that is on a mezzanine level above where we're showing this kitchen. It's like maybe 7 feet tall. It's really inadequate. It doesn't house enough clothes. So one of the things we were tasked with is trying to find a home for it somewhere in the program. And so we basically decided to get rid of that mezzanine level and we moved it upstairs. So if we look at our second level now, what we have is we have the administration block with a meeting room. And this basically expands what Jubilee has right now. We're able to provide some additional offices and then some restrooms for the administration. And then we also have a laundry facility. So there's an existing laundry facility right now. So this is kind of a little bit comparable. It's a little bit more expanded than what's there before. We have some social services areas. We have bathrooms. Now this is where the meat of everything is going. So currently, if you look at this food pantry area in the back here, this is completely unused right now. So I think there was a fire at some point. There's a fire in the food pantry and even the storage area at some point. So what we're proposing to basically gut what's there right now, pour new slabs, and try and reuse these spaces. And what that's going to mean is that's going to be able to add a food pantry that Jubilee currently does not have. So that was a big thing with the feasibility study. They needed to make sure that they could have a food pantry in this new structure. And the clothing room, as you can see, is quite bigger than I was describing on the ground level. Frozen. Should catch up. Okay. Nope, not thank you, not yet. Okay, so, all right, so here's the elevations of the building. So materiality. So the existing building is brick, is painted. And so what we tried to do is we tried to provide a nice juxtaposition between new and existing to seamlessly integrate the two. So we have brick as the existing. We also provide brick on the new building, or the new addition rather. And then we have high density fiber cement. The biggest things with these materials is durability. Durability, durability, durability. Mark approached us and said, hey, we can't have anything that's not gonna be able to withstand damage. So that's what we tried to provide. I think the biggest thing about this facade that's changed is the level of transparency to the building. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to get rid of all those notions, those conceived notions that this building has to be shut down. We want this building to be light. We want it to be bright. We want the guests to be able to feel like they're actually in a place that's welcoming, warm, inviting. And so that's a part of the big thing we've done with this. So we've added a lot of glass here. We've also added planters to that sidewalk to try and liven everything up. This additional seating. And as you can see, we start to show the lighting for the building that'll kind of, the lighting is actually gonna adhere with the dark skies guidelines, or friendly skies, dark skies, one of the two. I apologize for that. But it's going to adhere with that. There's not gonna be up lighting. It's all gonna be down lighting. It's gonna be LEDs. So it's going to make sure that this place is well lit and safe. If you look here, you could see that loading zone, that loading area that allows us to have safe access to the building to deliver goods to Jubilee Kitchen. Here's a rendering. And thank you.
Thank you, Dario. We will now move into our Q&A portion. Okay, so. Okay, this is for the Lower Hill. So does anyone have any questions for the Jubilee Kitchen project? You can raise your hands raise your hand or add them to the Q&A tool. Okay,
Osei, I have a resident here asking what is the tentative date completion date of the project?
So we're still working on that. Right now, we're going through a capital campaign. And so, once Jubilee is able to commit the funds required for the project, then we'll start to hone in on that. But what I will say is we're getting closer. We're starting to go through the permitting process, but everything realistically is hinging on the capital campaign. And if I remember correctly, Mark, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 8 to 12 months for the construction.
Right, I would hope to have it finished by the fourth quarter of 2023.
okay, not a question, but a comment in the Q&A. Beverly says this is a much needed project.
And it's even much greater and better than what Dario described. So it's really going to be an exciting time for us.
Contracting of this building, will there be minority contractors, Black contractors? Because what I see a
Will
lot
there
of
be
times is in my
Airbnb?
community, I don't see people that look like me working on it.
Right, so a question the
in terms of the
resident has,
kitchen, when I worked at the Calvary, we had the kids involved, and we sent donations down there, but I seen people down there that look like me, but I'm wondering if people that look like me help renovate.
will there be MBE participation?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Was that a question for myself?
Yes.
Yes, there will be a WMB participation, and the CERO has committed to 30 to 35%, with the hopes that it can actually increase.
My question is, how many people are currently serviced by that facility? And is there a plan for off-site services during the construction for those, I'm assuming, growing population of people who may need those services?
Yes, I'll answer that. Right now, we don't really track, make people sign in. We try to let them, just respect them the way they are. But what I can tell you is we probably serve 100 to 125 meals a day. We probably have 10 people that get clothing, probably another 10 that get personal hygiene items from us. We probably help 100 people a year with rent or utility assistance. And we provide a variety of other things like showers and whatever for guests. But I'd say we probably serve over 1,000 people a year. Our biggest thing is we do not want to shut down during construction. We might have to hand out, instead of having a hot meal, we might need to hand out sandwiches or provide some kind of other access for people to get what they need from us. But our intent in Massaro is 100% supportive of this, that we do not close the building.
Which part two to that question, in your fundraising efforts, could you possibly add on a food truck or some type of offsite, still on the footprint of your space?
I'd love to if I could raise that much money. I will add, though, that we have a food pantry in Polish Hill, and out of that food pantry, we do home delivery. So we deliver to about 30 shut-ins twice a month. But a food truck would be great. And I can't say during the pandemic, we did deliver meals throughout the downtown and Hill District area. That's something we could consider again.
Piggyback on that question, where is this location of the food pantry in Polish Hill?
It's on Brereton Street. You know where Gooski's is?
Yes.
It's about 3 or 4 doors down from there. Towards
Going down toward Liberty or coming up toward?
Going down the hill.
Okay.
Reverend
I heard you fundraising. Can we ask the proposed budget to renovate this project, for this project?
So our Well, we're in the process of redoing the budget. So initially, our capital campaign was to raise 3.8 million. We're well on our way to that. I can only imagine that some of the costs that were in the original estimate have gone up. So we're probably going to need to be in about the $4 million range. That includes all the equipment, and it also includes some seed money to start some programs. We can help once we get some of the services upstairs, like the food pantry and the clothing room, and get it out of where people are eating. I think it'll attract a broader array of low-income people. And then we have some other social service programs that really help people move to become economically self-sufficient. So I think once we get all that in place, it's gonna really make a difference in people's lives.
Well, you're the only one I've heard say that. Self-sufficient. I commend you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that seems to be all of the questions at this time. So thank you, Dario and Mark.
And you wanted to ask questions to the other panelists.
Other question. On that Block E development of the music area, is that?
Oh, they have not presented yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but you didn't ask. So this is just for Jubilee. Any more questions on Jubilee's kitchen? All right. You're good, Osei.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Dario and Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you,
This
Osei.
concludes your portion of the meeting.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so we will move on to the Lower Hill, Block E and PLDP presentations. Would the main presenter please share their screen?
We can't do the camera thing.
Oh, we're gonna work.
You're right.
Dario, are you still on?
Yes.
Can you? Okay, can you answer this one question? I apologize.
Okay.
Will this expansion allow for more people to get served? Will different services be offered? If so, what?
So I wish Mark had not signed off, but the goal is to expand services. I know there's a homelessness, a preventing homelessness program. I know there are several programs, but I do know that Jubilee is committed to expanding their services. Especially with the food pantry, that's the biggest one, of course. Currently, they don't have a food pantry in the building. They have it off-site.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. And Ricky, I will provide additional follow-up information. Now officially turning it over to the Lower Hill, Block E and PLDP. Thank you.
Hey there, Osei, and hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? This is Boris Kaplan.
Perfect.
Is it possible at the boardroom as a panelist?
Osei, I don't know if you heard that question, but we have a conference room that we're trying to bring up where we have several of our team members.
Done.
Is there a way to make that possible? Can you promote that conference room line?
It's done.
So are you able to see the screen with the presentation?
I am.
And are we able to hear Chris Buccini and Dr. Kimberly Ellis from the boardroom?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes, and I see you, Dr. Ellis.
All right, thanks.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
Well, wonderful. I think we're ready to get started.
Wait, Craig needs to be promoted as a panelist too.
Done already.
Okay.
Great. All righty. Well, Bar, should I kick it off?
7:25, take it away.
Let's do it. All right, well, thank you, the Planning Commission, for hosting. Hold on, let's make sure we got this working. My apologies. All right, great. No, but I wanted to thank the Planning Commission for hosting, along with the 5 historic Hill District RCOs, the Shenley Heights Collaborative, the Hill Community Development Corporation, the Uptown Partners, the Hill District Consensus, and the Hill District Collaborative, and the Hill CDC. I think we have them there as well. It was great to meet so many of you recently at our community celebration. We had a great barbecue, and it was great to be in person to meet after being virtual for so long. We've got a very robust agenda tonight. We've got a lot to go over. And so what we'd like to go over in the next called 30 minutes is our introductions, our vision for the Lower Hill District, the Block E project reinvestment summary, the Block E program and design, the first amendment to the preliminary land development plan, and we'd love to leave it open for summary and Q&A. So as I said, we've got a lot of material to go through, and I would ask next for our historian and director of community arts and culture, Dr. Kimberly Ellis, whose birthday it is tonight. Dr. Ellis.
Good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here. So glad that so many community members are online and in person. Very happy to present before you, also for the city officials, and to be here with my team, the great team of the Lower Hill Redevelopment Team, and specifically Buccini Poland Group. As the historian, literally for the Historic Hill District and for this team, I just want to be very, very clear. We don't have time today, but I want to state that the origin of our neighborhood began in 1827 with 10 to 12 African-American families, all of whom were entrepreneurs, educators, doctors, and so on and so forth. So this is not the history of our community. We're just dealing with this particular topic today. So when we deal with this particular topic today, we know that federal funding came into the city of Pittsburgh to try to basically renew the urban environment, then called urban renewal. And Pittsburgh was the first city to receive that funding. That is why the Urban Redevelopment Authority was created. So the damage basically that we have seen on these 2 slides, and that we all know this history, that in 1939, the Hill District looked like this on the left. And then in 1967, with the advent of what was supposed to be the Cultural Arts District, it was supposed to have at least 20 to 30 large size buildings. That Washington Plaza that sits on the corner of Crawford and Center Avenue, there were supposed to be at least 20 other buildings like that. That never happened. So not only was it about displacing people, but it was also about not even realizing the initial plans of the development. It was a botched development. Now, this is only the 2nd development ever occurring in the history of Pittsburgh, and we are now in 2022. But I know that this process started years earlier, but just to be clear, this is where we are. So this is the opportunity to get it right. As many of you all know, half of our neighborhood is completely empty. And as many of you also know, the Urban Redevelopment owns the majority of the plots of land in the Historic Hill District. The Urban Redevelopment Authority that botched this development is ultimately responsible to make this right for our community and for the city of Pittsburgh. And I'm so thankful that today we have city officials, government officials, members of the URA, members of city planning that know about this history, that feel responsible for righting historical wrongs and for doing what they can do to actually make sure this has been realized. If you are roughly around my age, it is my birthday today, you know that you're not old enough. You were not old enough to be displaced. That is for elders like Salah Uddin. That's for elders like Brenda Tate's family, and her friends. They actually experienced that displacement. Those of us who are the descendants of these people, we grew up for over 45 years with nothing but the civic arena and parking lots. My mother taught me how to drive in that parking lot. That was the usefulness for me. So we've had nothing down there for the last 60 years. So be very clear about what we're talking about when we talk about this history. And yes, we know that there were 9 churches displaced from the lower hill, 9. There were thousands of residents displaced and abused, quite frankly. And they were many different people. But yes, 8,000 African Americans displaced. And that's why when we tell our story and we hear what's happened, we know that a lot of this has been on the African American community. And because we still are low income, low socioeconomic status, the burden of all of this happened. But there's something else that happened that's really important while this map is up. The city of Pittsburgh didn't want to refuse any of the federal funding. And so there was federal funding offered to build housing projects, public housing, all over the city of Pittsburgh. For racist reasons, quite frankly, other neighborhoods decided we don't want public housing and told the city, no, don't build it here, not in Squirrel Hill, not in Bloomfield, not in this neighborhood, not in Hazelwood. And so the Hill District, despite its origins in 1827, the Hill District by 1967 and after was disproportionately placed with a number of different public housing and what is known as projects. When public policy changed, public policy, that is what created this cycle of poverty, this sort of trapped people in these projects. That is the fuller legacy of what we're dealing with, and that is the history today. So I just wanted to make that very clear so that we understand. And also, I'm sorry, in 1967, ironically enough, that was the first year that the Penguins were actually given their contract.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. As an additional intro for today, we're incredibly excited to continue this discussion, not just on the investment in the Lower Hill, but on this unprecedented community reinvestment. When we last presented in a DAM format in March of 21, we had plans and we had renderings and we had a vision for what the overall Lower Hill could be. 18 months later, it seems like a lot longer to me, but 18 months later, the landscape looks very different as we are literally deep down in the trough, making it happen. We've broken ground on a $250 million project. When was the last time that such a transformational investment was made in the city of Pittsburgh? A $250 million investment in the middle of COVID. We've made significant investments in the upper and middle hill, not just the lower hill. We were responsible for $7.188 million of cash, $7.2 million of cash almost, that went into a community-controlled reinvestment fund that today sits with in a URA account. This was sent on September 13th of 2021, 7.2 million. We made many direct investments in the historic Hill District, such as the Ammon Recreational Center, the catalytic renovation and adaptive reuse of the historic YMCA on Center Avenue, one of my favorite groundbreakings of all time, Big Tom's Barbershop, and most recently, one of the more fun days I've had in a long time, the August Wilson House grand opening and ribbon cutting. These are just to name just a few of the direct investments we made in the middle and upper hill. Also, I can never give enough credit to FLDP Bank and all that they've done. The many tens of millions that they've invested, things like a contractor line of credit to help minority and Black-owned businesses build their business and create capacity to work in our project. They've also created an expanded homeowner closing cost assistance. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of is we have not just been hitting our minority contractor commitments, but we have actually exceeded them, as you will see later on. The CSER has a target of 30%, but 32% of all of our contracts, of all of our construction contracts, have been awarded to MBEs just to date. 22% of those are to Black-owned businesses. This represents, we've awarded $24 million of contracts to Black-owned businesses alone. This does not happen easy. This is a very large team. And so the reason that the Lower Hill Development Project is unparalleled in the history of Pittsburgh, unparalleled in the history in the Commonwealth, and why we have a national model for equitable development right here in the Hill's backyard, right in the backyard, It's because of the team we've assembled. And I'm honored to be working directly with Bomani House, who leads the team for us, Dr. Kimberly Ellis, both of whom are leaders in the Historic Hill District, and the 20 others whose shoulders we all stand on top of. We've worked tirelessly, not just to throw numbers at you and hit number targets, but to create real human stories and people that some of which we'll share tonight. And to get here, this is like, it's historic, the capacity building we've had to do to hit and succeed these numbers. Thank you. And with that, Bomani, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Bomani?
Let's see.
I can take this slide while Bomani is coming together. I think the point of this particular slide is to show that there's cooperation across this entire Lower Hill redevelopment project. Literally from government organizations, you have Councilman Lavelle. I'm sorry, let me highlight that the people that are highlighted in yellow are all Historic Hill residents. So you have residents working all across this project to get things done. So under government organizations, you have Councilman Daniel Lavelle, Chief of Staff Jake Wheatley. Under community organizations, you have Daniel Lavelle, who's a part of the CSIP, EMC, the Executive Management Committee, which we'll talk about later. You have Marimba Alliance of the Hill CDC and Tyann Battle of ACH Clear Pathways. You have Bomani House working for the Buccini Polling Group, as well as myself. And I just want to definitely highlight that the CSIP does talk about hiring from the community. So we're hiring from the community, and we're going to continue to hire from the community. We also have Jessica Jeffries on our team as well, although she's not a Historic Hill resident, but she is African American. So we have the Workforce Development and MWBE Partners, Janae Smith of E Holdings. Many of you know her as Irv Williams' daughter. We have Francine Cameron and Kevin Cameron from the Cameron Group. In construction and design, we have Howard Graves, our architect, one of our architects, and Todd Graves. And I'm sorry, DeWitt Walton, who is also our county councilman, but he runs the A. Philip Randolph Institute, one of our construction training institutes. And in marketing and communications, we have Rick Suthers, as well as our former street team member, Dina Zenman. So as you see, we have Hill District residents working all across this entire sphere of the Lower Hill redevelopment. Bomani, I'll move it on to Bomani House. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis, and thank you, team, for your words and comments prior. I want to start off by allowing us to vision what we imagine will take place in the next 3 years and the next 10 years. This is an aerial view of Wiley Avenue, kind of looking over Crawford into the Lower Hill District. And to the left, you'll see residential housing. To the right, at the top, also at Crawford, you'll see residential housing. And then as you travel down the spine of the site of this illustration, you see in the middle, the proposed Block E projects for both the garage and for the Live Nation venue for why we're here tonight. And at the bottom, obviously, is the First National Bank Financial Center. And so I want you to imagine our community being rebuilt, fully built out from a perspective that is not not second to any that we've seen before. So I want to push the next slide, please. So what you're seeing here, when you see these buildings, and to the left, you see the First National Bank Center, Financial Center. Up the middle, you see the 2.4 acres of open park space. You also see overlooks. You see a food hall. And in the middle there, you see the Live Nation venue. And in the corner back there, you'll see the garage. And so this is how we're imagining that with collective work, we can build out the Lower Hill. And we're seeing blocks G, blocks E and blocks B will soon be built out over the next couple of years. Next slide, please. So here again is the focus of tonight's conversation around Block E and the Block G, the first National Bank Financial Center. Next slide, please. So just want to go through a couple of details about the project. Oftentimes when acts come through Pittsburgh, they skip over Pittsburgh. If you're a Kevin Hart, you can fill up the arena. If you don't have the star power to draw that many people, you might have to go to stage AE or even to Mr. Smalls. But here, this allowed for us to capture this 4,500 person music venue will allow us to catch acts like Mary J. Blige and others who would normally pass over Pittsburgh. Behind the music venue is a 900 plus space, a parking garage. And I want to just talk about the financials for a little bit. When we talk about the LRTA, right, that's the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance. This is a tool that allows for us to be able to take tax revenues, half, 50% of those tax revenues generated from the project, each parcel, and parlay that tax revenue base into the middle and upper hill, the greater hill district. And so that's a 50-50 split. Other developers on other development projects around the city don't have to do that. Thank you for that legislation and for all those who helped to push for that to be 30% MBE contracting. When we hear these numbers, there are a lot of personal stories that go behind these. These are real people. We produce to the EMC, the Executive Management Committee that oversees. Can we cut off the chat? I'm reading chats that are disturbing the presentation, please. The Executive Management Committee is a committee that is consistent of the government, the mayor's office, the Hill CDC, the Pittsburgh Penguins, community members, and other development stakeholders, along with the Pittsburgh Penguins. We produce a report every month that goes out to not only this executive management overarching group, but we're very transparent and we produce this for the public and anybody who wants to see these numbers. It also goes to the Sports Exhibition Authority and the Urban Redevelopment Authority, and to the mayor's office, of course. When we produce these numbers, here's what we found on Block G. A lot of folks were very skeptical about our ability to double what the city's numbers are, which are 15 MWBE and 7% for women business enterprises. We've doubled that. We said we're going to go 30 and 15, and we've been able to exceed that. So I want to give a shout out real quick to Wesley Schwant, Matt Corris, Olivia Grunsich back in Wilmington, as well as Irv Williams and Janae Williams, who helped to push this in a way that gets us into rooms with contractors and larger firms to break up these packages so that we can help to build a capacity with these packages. And we're talking multi-million-dollar packages. And so across 42, we have 42 different MWBEs across 29 trades. That's impressive. We've really, really hit some numbers. And we don't just do MWBE tracking. We also make sure that we track exactly how many African-American businesses and what those contract values are. And so to date, we have $24 million in awards going to Black-owned businesses, 24 million. And so we should all of us around this city, we should all be proud of those numbers to know that our contractors are participating in the erection of the steel, the curtain wall, fire protection, electrical site work. When you see the concrete going up, when you see the dirt moving, when you see those lights flashing, know that those are African-American owned companies, as well as women business enterprises. And so here we have one of the examples of small companies. Some of these are 2- and 3-person companies that we've worked with, and they're helping to, we've been helping them to secure some of the monies that the First National Bank, our First National Bank partners have put down for small business lines of credit to be able to access them, because oftentimes you can't go very many months or weeks without paying your team. And so this helps them to expend that. I'm going to stop there because I don't want to go too far, but I do want to say, and I want you to note that as we embrace the Community Collaborative Implementation Plan, or often called the CSIP, you can see that this deals with area 1 for minority women business enterprises. This deals with the focus area of number 3, that is coordinated community development strategies. This also deals with CSIP area numbers 4 and 5, which deals with our communications, reporting and tracking that goes out public to anybody who wants to see these reports. And last but not least, our wealth building initiatives. Next slide. I'll hand it up to Dr. Ellis from here.
Yeah. Thank you. So when we come to community reinvestments, the timeline and engagement, many of you all received this flyer either electronically or you received it when you came to the Hill District Community Celebration and Barbecue, or when you came to the joint meeting of the Hill District Collaborative and the Hill Consensus Group. One side just has community reinvestments, which are many, and some of them have already been covered. I'll cover some more. But this other slide really just reiterates what Bomani has already said. In terms of our timing, Block E is in pre-development and has contracting commitments to nearly a dozen MWBEs again. Design began in the second quarter of 2022. The document released fall 2022. The bidding is supposed to begin winter of 2022, which is why we're here. The awards also begin in winter 2022, and that construction too began early 2023. So as Bomani mentioned, Janae Williams of E Holdings and Irv Williams, they help us to prepare minority bidders and to prepare Black businesses to bid on the site. It is a process, and it is not something that is easy. And while we're here, just if you look at the bottom of the flyer, on the left, it says E Holdings, and it has the email address. I just wanted to say really quickly, if you email diversity@eholdings with an S, inc.com, you will be put on the list. We really need you to sign up for the list. We have people who are very interested and who don't necessarily know about this project, or who just know little pieces. So email E Holdings and you'll be on our list. Number 2 is on November 5th, there is the Builders Guild trade. It's also on the flyer. It's really small in the flyer, but please mark down the date that November 5th is at the David Lawrence Convention Center from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And that is for anybody interested in any aspects of the trades. The other important part is this joint meeting with the Hill Collaborative Voices and the Hill Consensus Group. Earlier, Marimba of the Hill CDC talked about the development review process. Now, I just want to say, to the community in general, that having a development review process or having a development review panel is extremely important. We have to regulate what goes on in our community and any development that is coming. But what you don't want to do is to have a sort of lopsided, non-transparent process. So that's something that we actually have to talk about a little bit later between and amongst ourselves, and we will do it. We could do it tonight as well. But when it comes to this particular scoring, I want to draw you all back. The DRP scoring that we did for the Hill CDC in February of 2020, we received an 89 out of 100. That means that Block E already passed. Under the Block E CSIP EMC engagement since 2019, that happened. But 2 weeks ago on October 3rd, we had another presentation in community scoring because we're always presenting in front of the community, always, the whole community, not just one person, not just one organization. So this joint community meeting that was held with the Hill Consensus Group and the Hill Collaborative Voices on October 3rd, we received a score of 2.8 and 2.9, which is passing score for both of those organizations. I'll also talk a little bit about what happens later, but we'll move on. When it comes to the CSIP focus area of job creation and workforce development, we've done a ton of work. as many of you all know. Many of you were at the groundbreaking and the ribbon cutting. The First Source Center is literally a workforce development program. It is business resources, and it is construction contracting and training. So we work with groups like the A. Philip Randolph Institute, the Builders Guild of Western Pennsylvania, the Carpenters Apprentice Readiness Program, and BankWorks. So there are people that have been hired and have gone through, there are Hill residents that have been hired and have gone through these programs. They only take 5 to 8 weeks and they change your life. When it comes to business support and resources, this is Rick Southers, our photographer, actually taking a headshot of Cheyenne Bronzel of Fat Girls Are Cooking. You'll learn more about her later, and many of you know her anyway. But providing headshots, right, at a job fair, that enhances your business. Oftentimes people don't have headshots. It's really small but important. So job creation and workforce development is something through the First Source Center as well. We also have a robust street team. We've been out there in the community, and I want to draw your attention because, you know, I didn't even know that this was coming, but just yesterday, Renata Walker, who is there in the bottom slide, she actually wrote us an endorsement. I'm really grateful to her. She said that First Source Center got her a job, and she got a job one that she wanted. She said that, you know, she's approaching retirement and she needed something different. We customize for her. That's what we do. We work person by person by person and get them different jobs. So Sherry Nichols, Lanier Gore, Daniel Anderson, the list can go on. We're very proud of the work that we do. Next slide. When it comes to job creation and workforce development, investing in young people is extremely important. So we created a partnership with Pittsburgh Public Schools Career and Technical Education Program that's directed by Angela Mike. As you can see on the slides, we held a career exploration day at PPG Paints Arena, where all the experts across the Lower Hill redevelopment team came and split people up in different groups and gave them advice and information about their particular field. You have to know what a field looks like when you're looking into. As you can see, there's Chris Buccini there in the front, giving information about finance and business development. In the upper right corner, the reason why those young men are standing there very proud to hold those boxes is that they bought boots with money that we provided. Oftentimes, if you come from a low income community, even if you get accepted into a program, you might not be able to afford the supplies that you actually need for the program. So we just asked, what do the students need? And we were told, well, you know what, the seniors, they usually can't afford the boots because they're $100, $150. Can you buy them for us? We said, yes. This is one group of the students that bought their boots. They're very happy about it. The second thing is we have students who graduate from EMT program. You know, they oftentimes can't afford their driver's license training. Can you pay for that? Absolutely, we paid for that. It was a done deal. The reason why I'm there in the center is because the Buccini Polling Group received an industry award from the PPS CTE program, which is now a partner with the city of Pittsburgh. So we're only going to do more and get bigger. So when it comes to the CSIP focus area of coordinated community development, Chris has already mentioned the LRTA, Bomani has already talked about the LRTA. I think that what's really important and that one, as Bomani said, no other development has a LRTA, no other one, only us. And so it's a great thing. And then here's the other thing. There is no requirement to pay the LRTA up front. The community and the co-chairs of the LRTA committee are Marimba Malayans and Councilman Daniel LaBelle. The community asked for the money up front instead of to pay it over a 20-year period where we actually would have gotten more money. I'm sorry, a 10-year period where we would have actually gotten more money. However, it's okay. The community said, hey, we want the money up front, and that's fine. So the gift, so to speak, is not the existence of the LRTA. It is your tax dollars. But the gift and the conscientious corporate leadership from Buccini Polling Group was to actually take out a loan and to monetize the LRTA and then say, here is $7.18 million up front. We have nothing to do with how the community spends it. And that was delivered September 13th, 2021. Coordinated community development. Next slide.
Just go back on that one shows that there's 400 grand coming or $4 million coming in Block A.
Oh, yes. And there is, I'm sorry, So there is actually a LERTA for Block E as well. So be mindful. There's a LERTA for every single block of this development. 7.18 million came out of Block G1. There's a projected 4 million that is for Block E. So we want to make that absolutely clear. Okay. The next slide and the next area here that which we follow the CSIP, that's our North Star, is inclusionary housing initiatives. Now, there's no physical housing for this part. We're only on the Block E garage. However, there are 3 elements to the housing that comes with what we're doing here. One is the parking tax projections. There is $8.2 million over, this is the one that's over a 20-year period, coming to the Hill District for the Housing Opportunity Fund. Councilman Lavelle is still working out the details of the Housing Opportunity Fund. So the parking tax diversion is important. And then when we get to the CSIP focus area of coordinated development and community legacy initiatives, my fave, we are dealing with 0.44 acres of urban open space. Now look, the urban open space comes about as a result of the opening of Wiley Avenue. Our community, we said, reconnect Wiley Avenue to downtown. Well, guess what? Even though we made that demand, you can't actually reconnect Wiley Avenue all the way to downtown, the way that we imagined it and the way that it was prior to urban redevelopment, right? Why? Because Washington Plaza is right there. And then you have the Frankie Bay Pace Park, and then you have a hotel there. Those are not, like that street and the hotel are not Lower Hill responsibilities. So what do? Well, then create a beautiful walkway, literally. So that's how the Frankie May Pace Park was created, which I worked on. And then we also have the urban open space. We have our finalists, our artists that have been chosen to work on the open space, and I can get to those later. Yeah, so then we have.
I just want to point out, when we talk about capacity building, Dr. Ellis started as our historian, but she's quickly become our team economist. So thank you for digging deep in on the LERTA and those numbers. Bomani, I don't know, was this your slide or?
Yeah, well, we talked about the contractor access to capital. I'll be very brief with it. I talked about it a little earlier, but basically when contractors are awarded on the site, they have up to $100,000 that they can access to help pay for costs that are associated with paying dues and labor costs, labor and also construction materials. And so we're very happy that that's there. There were some barriers that prevented people from accessing that, but now those are removed, and we'll see that. We're hoping to see for awardees to be able to access the $2 million. Next slide, please. So I want to turn it over to Eric Booth, who is the head of Desmone, who's our architectural firm, pushing for the designing the Live Nation venue and also the garage. Eric?
Thanks, Bonnie. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to hear this evening and present the project to you. So I'm Eric Booth. I'm the president of Desmone. We are the lead architects on the Block E development, but we're actually just one of many other team members that are part of this. And we have several members here this evening that are part of these different companies. CGL Engineering, working with SciTech for MEP. We have THA Consultants as our structural and parking consultants. Michael Baker working with Cosmos for Site Civil. Studio Volti will be designing the public safety component to our project, which I'll point out. Troxatech Enterprises handling our BIM coordination. And we have Upstudio Landscapes for our landscape architects and Advantis engineers for our sustainability. Next slide.
Pardon, Eric, before you leave that slide, Can you speak to the number of African-American owned companies partnered up?
Yeah, so Cosmos, Troxatech, SciTech, and Studio Volti. So we have 4 of those.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay, so before I talk about what the project is, I want to make a point about one thing that it is not. Earlier versions of the project had an outside venue, and based on community feedback about that possibly being too loud, that has actually been removed. And so now the current scheme only has a totally indoor venue. There's nothing on the exterior anymore. Next slide. Oh, sorry, one back. There you go. All right, so we'll get into the actual building itself. So we're looking at the corner of Logan and Wiley, and this is a 3D view. And so we're looking at right here, square in the corner is the music venue itself, which would have seat about 4,500 people. To the left of the screen, you see the parking garage. But in terms of the venue itself, right there in the center at the corner of Logan and Wiley would be the main entry to the venue itself. There's a bunch of doors, a grand set of stairs takes you up to the next level. To the right of that would be the incubator space, sometimes called the catapult space, which actually faces directly onto Wiley. And to the left of the entrance for the venue, we have the box office, and then we have additional retail. And then we actually have additional retail in the footprint of the garage itself. Next slide. Yeah, great. So this is the corner of Bedford to the left and Logan to the right. And so now we're looking primarily at the parking garage itself. To the top left there, that little bump out, that's where the public safety building portion would be. And I'll show that in a floor plan in a little bit. And then to the basically mid block here is where the vehicular entrance would be. To the right of vehicular entrance would be the pedestrian lobby. And a couple of things to point out, this would be largely metal panels with terracotta elements worked within it. And we're looking to incorporate within the actual facade itself words or phrases of meaning that would be backlit in the evening. And these will be words and phrases that would be based on or relevant to the history of the site. Next slide. So one back. There you go. So this is a close-up of the base of the mid block. And what we're looking at here is the music venue to the right. You can see where the sign is in that commercial space down there. And then the garage lobby right there in the center. And then the retail that's associated with the garage would be to the left of the garage lobby. And then to the left of the retail would be the main vehicular entry. One thing to point out is that we realize that this is going to be the first point of entry for a lot of folks into the site. And so it's really important that we sort of capture that experience. And so in each level of the lobby, so in each where the glass that we're looking at here in the center, that's the lobby at the elevator of each level. And then we plan on incorporating displays, images to kind of tell the story of the history of this site. Next slide. So now we're looking at the site plan, and just to orient everyone, Fullerton would be to the top, Bedford would be to the left of your screen, Logan down to the bottom, and Wiley to the right. And so essentially the left side here is the parking garage portion and the right side is a venue. They're essentially two separate buildings that butt up against each other. And for the venue itself, I had pointed out the entry at the corner of Wiley and Logan at the corner there. And then you'd see where those areas are highlighted, where it says commercial 1,200 square feet on facing Wiley. That would be for the incubator or the catapult space. And then the remainder of that shaded portion over there will be additional commercial space, which could be retail and leasable space. In the center of the block, we have the lobby, which I mentioned before, for the garage, and then additional commercial space of around 2,400 square feet that can be leased out. And to the left of that would be the main vehicular entry to the garage. Next slide. So this is the next level up. This gets kind of repetitive, but here we see the garage lobby right there in the center again. And this would be the main level of the venue itself. So you take the stairs up and you're at the main level. And then what's also important to point out here is on the backside in Fullerton Street is where the loading would happen for the trucks coming in and out. And this went through some extensive review in terms of traffic patterns and so forth to make sure that that wouldn't be disruptive to the traffic flow. And then the remainder of this floor plan on the left side would just be for the parking garage, which is pretty repetitive as it goes up. Next slide. So this is the third level, again, garage lobby in the center. What's important to point out here is that there will actually be a second vehicular entry and egress off of the Fullerton side on the third level off of the garage. Next slide. And at the fourth level, we see the corner of Bedford and Fullerton. This is where the public safety portion would be. And this is essentially a facility that would be able to house emergency vehicles. And then that repeats as we go up. Yeah, you can just keep going. So now we're looking at the corner of Wiley and Fullerton. And this is really important because this intersection is extremely important from a historical perspective. Nearby here were a lot of really famous jazz clubs. So we had the Rumba and the Hurricane Club. And so as part of sort of honoring the rich legacy of the jazz and the music for this, this region, we're actually incorporating that right into the facade itself. So the facade architecture in this portion is actually influenced by music. And in fact, we use the piano keys as sort of an inspiration for how we organize the windows, this corner. But furthermore, we're incorporating images that would be relevant to the history of the site. So these are just some sample images, but the idea is we pull images of things that actually occurred at or around the site. They, again, celebrate that rich jazz legacy. And these are no small things. In fact, the size of these things are over 20 foot tall. So they will actually be extremely substantial here. Other things to point out the slide is that to the right would be the loading area for the music venue. To the right is the remainder of the parking garage with the additional vehicular entrance. All the way in the far corner is the public safety building. And then again, to the left of this corner, we would have the incubator space right there in the center, and then the entry to the venue itself at the far corner. And now I'll hand it over to Craig.
Good evening, folks. This is Craig Dunham with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Thanks for the opportunity to be with all of you tonight. What we have up on the screen are a couple of images that are part of the long story of the master plan for the Lower Hill site, which began really in earnest after the arena designs were finalized and the civic arena was demolished. In 2011, we started the planning process and looked at the Greater Hill District Master Plan that had recently been completed, the green print, Find the Rivers, other plans that had recently been done. In the 2 years following, we had well over 100 community meetings of all sizes and scale. In 2014, the preliminary land development plan was approved. We started then to build streets, which were constructed in 2016 and 17. Concurrent to that, we brought in, some of you may remember, the design firm BIG, and they challenged us with some new, fresh thinking about the relationship between movement and the open spaces and how we would walk through the site, less about vehicles. At the same time, the Frankie May Pace Park was in design, and we started to think about pathways and connections and pedestrian movement through the site very carefully. We then worked through another planning process with our partners Gensler and came up with the diagram that you see on the screen. And it really is an organization of the blocks around open spaces, around Wiley Avenue as the center of this district, the focal point of the district, and using the open space and pathways to navigate the hillside, beginning at Frankie May Pace up to Crawford, or from Crawford down to Frankie May Pace through downtown. What we have presented in the preliminary land development plan, you can go to the next slide, please, is an update to the organization of streets and blocks. Slide 30 there, thank you. On the left is the PLDP that was approved in 2014. And as I just outlined, a number of things have happened since then. Frankie May Pace was built, the streets were built, and what we're proposing basically is to not construct any more public streets. What we found was that the new street designs, if built, would become very steep, much like the Wiley section from Fullerton to Crawford is, and that if we use open spaces and courtyards, we could create a more pedestrian-friendly environment than adding new streets to the blocks, to the neighborhood. So our proposal is a reorganization of open spaces and not constructing any further streets. Next slide, please. This slide sort of talks about those streets and the way that we would move through blocks using courtyards and alleys. Courtyards and alleys would be spaces that would be made available to the public for access via an easement, so you can work your way through the sites. It also gives us the ability to reorganize the lower blocks of G and F so that we can make use of consolidated open space with the vacation of that lower section of Wiley. And the open spaces are organized around connecting to the completed Frankie May Pace across Washington Place. We have some ideas about improvements on Washington Place as well that we think align with the improvements on Center Avenue that we want to share with the community going forward. So that's really the framework of what we're proposing in the preliminary land development plan. There's some slight adjustments to building heights because of the change in blocks. But the concepts of the heights that are outlined in the PLDP with the view corridor are maintained. The other elements of the PLDP, other than what I've specifically spoken to, remain as originally presented and approved and are still the regulatory components of that document. Thank you for the opportunity to walk through this.
Yeah. All right, so as I shared, we use the CSIP as our guiding star, North Star. The CSIP Executive Management Committee engagement is very, very clear for you all to understand that Bomani Howes, he addressed this already, but I wanted to really break it down. We report to the CSIP EMC every single month. So every single month, Councilman Lavelle, Jake Pollock, Kevin Ackland, or really at this point in time, it's now for 1 month, it's been Craig Dunham, who's been added to the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's Tyann Battle, Alicia George, Glenn Grayson Jr., Glenn Mahone, Tracy McCants Lewis, and Marimba Malines. They all receive every aspect of this development every single month. Be very clear on that. So if you have questions, these are the people that you need to be asking what's going on, and you should be getting proper information. And we know that you're not getting proper information, and that's unfortunate. Next slide. So when it comes to the CSIP, what we've reviewed and what you've heard is that we cover minority and women business enterprise inclusion. Thank you, Bomani. We're at $24 million in Black businesses alone. We covered inclusionary and home ownership housing programs. You know that there's no physical housing for the Block E garage, but we talked about the programming that does exist that provides funding for housing opportunity. We talked about coordinated community development strategies from the LRTA, which gives a 50-50 share. And we talked about communications, reporting, and tracking, which I just addressed every month. And actually every quarter, we also report out to the SCA and URA. We talked about job creation, local inclusion, and workforce development. I talked about the First Source Center program. We talked about wealth building initiatives, working with different nonprofits from the Riverside Center for Innovation, as well as involvement from minority-owned investment partners. But the other part about wealth building that actually helps out so much. I'm sorry, let me back up. We also have assisted the Hill Federal Credit Union. That's really important. But the other part of wealth building initiatives is actually helping people out, like when they need the actual help. So when it comes to even our MWBE program, we do matchmaking. We do what Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta. That's been my guiding post, because I know how the Black middle class was created in Atlanta, and it was through the building of the airport and the matchmaking of the different contractors, matchmaking a minority contractor with a majority contractor. We're doing that on this site. And so also the culture and community legacy initiatives. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I announced for you all, in case you hadn't heard it, is that we do have artists that have been selected and that are working on the urban open space. The work that they're doing on the urban open space will be permanent, just like the work that I did and Daryl Kinzel and Amir Rashid and Lakeisha Bird did on the Frankie May Pace Park. Those artists are Amir Rashid, Charlotte Ka, Mobutu Reynolds, Devron Daly, Brandon Jennings, James Simon, Samuel Richardson, who's our fabricator consultant, Brian Peters, Marlena Vassar, Natan Diakon Furtado, Aki Hopen, and Casey Jackson. So as you see, we have a good mix of people. We have Hill residents, and we're excited to be working with them. Next slide. So overall, we use the CSIP as our North Star. There's a lot of information that you need to know. And we do know that we are under a misinformation campaign. Unfortunately, many of you all have been misinformed about a lot of different things, and we can talk about it. Now we actually want to show our MWV and wealth building video. And so here we go. Thank you.
Can we actually send this out after the meeting?
Yeah. Hey, Boris, it's on mute. I think it's on your mute, Boris. Let's try to do it.
Can you not hear the
No.
narration?
Oh yeah, make the volume louder, Boris.
It's turned all the way up. Here we go.
$44 million in awarded subcontracts to minority and women-owned businesses, of which $24 million were awarded to Black-owned businesses alone, each of whom comes with real names and their own stories to tell.
My name is Curtis Moorhead. The name of my company is Emerald Electrical Services, LLC. I grew up in Robinson Court, which is one of the projects formerly in the Hill District. And I remember seeing very few of us out there working construction or skilled trades back in 1979 when I started my apprenticeship. And they made it a point to let you know. Clearly, I'd say 50% of the people.
We seem to be having some technical difficulties. There is no sound. Are we able to send this video out after the meeting?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. We will move into our question and answer session. Ikana has been waiting since the beginning of this meeting. So if you would like to speak, you now have the ability.
I'll put us back on camera.
Greetings and good day to everyone. My title is Chief Ikahana, and I was wondering, and also fielding a question for a Hill District resident. I am a descendant of a displaced great-grandmother and grandmother who, when she died at 90, still lived on the hill. And the question that I have is the current developments that are and have taken place on the hill have not included a lot of the residents' input. I have friends who currently reside on the hill who are not able to use the amenities. And I know this may seem small to you, but it's huge to the residents, and I'm speaking with their voices, that there are amenities across the street from them that they're unable to use. And historically, these people have lived on the hill, were able to enjoy community sites, community centers that are in close proximity to where they live. And now they're not able to even use some of these amenities, such as community rooms. And also another question directly from a Hill District resident, Amber Jackson, wants to know, why can't the Sports and Exhibition Authority give, you gave an example that, let's say the ticket sales were $50, $5 out of that allotment to include the surcharge back to the community for community purposes. And that will conclude the questions that I have for today.
Chief O'Connor, thank you for your question. I'll take the first one. With regard to resident input, we're open and transparent. We want to bring more people to the table. In our first slides, you saw that there's a wide collaborative of residents and stakeholders, development stakeholders who are involved in the process, and we open our arms for anyone who wants to get involved. We're a progressive and positive, forward-moving group, and we love that energy. So one of the ways you can stay posted on getting input is going to www.lowerhillredevelopment.com. We'll put your information in our index base, and you'll get every announcement of every meeting that we have.
Hey, Connor, to answer your question on the $2 per ticket, $2 per car surcharge, that is a ask not to the SDA because they will not be the ultimate owners. They own the land now, and they already have their sales agreement in place with PAR, who has their agreement in place with Buccini Polling Group. I do not know who else may be a member of the development team for this particular site from a legal standpoint, but those are the parties who would be responsible for delivering on the surcharge, whether it be parking or tickets, or their lease, the organizations that lease from them. However they work it out, it would have to be them to clarify. But the SCA has already made their deal. That deal will expire in 2015. If this project is not delivered, I'm pretty sure. You can fact check that, but I'm pretty sure 2015. But until that time, and Craig, you can correct me, I see you shaking your head a bit, whenever the next expiration period is. Anyway, all that to say that it's the private entities who would have to deliver and commit. So it would be Buccini Polling Group, as well as the Penguins, who would have to make that commitment. As I was stating before, the LRTA and the parking tax diversion is public money, it's tax money. And even though it was capitalized up front, we have to keep in mind that for the Lower Hill Block G1 site, and I'm not sure who from the community requested the capitalization. I think that was more of a decision from the URA and some other elected officials, but it was implied that the community members requested the capitalization. That's not the case. So at any rate, I'll pause, but I just wanted to clarify who the surcharge should be coming from and the appropriate party to receive that request.
Thank you, Miranda, for answering my question directly.
You're welcome. I hear Craig in the background, but
Yes.
the next question, okay, go ahead.
The parking surcharge and the ticket surcharge really came to light just last Friday morning, I guess as some result of some media communications. The parking surcharge was one of the strategies identified in the CSIP that could be used to fund the reinvestment fund. As the project advanced, as the development advanced, the LRTA was identified as the optimum tool to do that, and the LRTA was established, and now, as we've described in our presentation, is in effect on individual projects as they go forward. The parking tax diversion is another tool that's being used to generate impact and positive investment within the community. This idea of a ticket surcharge is frankly quite new, hardly 72 hours, and we are evaluating it in light of a number of other requests presented to us by the Hill CDC, and in particular around the New Granada Theater, to figure out what the appropriate response is, what the implications are to our operators, to ticket sales, and ultimately it's a consumer charge that's being passed on and being identified. So it's a new conversation. We hear it. We're trying to understand how it would work and what the appropriate response is on the ticket surcharge. But the parking surcharge is really something that was identified as an early strategy that we think was replaced by and is more effective as the LRTA, and now adding on to it the parking tax diversion.
I just have to fact check that a little bit here, that the LRTA was not solely established as the revenue stream. The CSIP explicitly states and additional revenue streams. because we understood that the LRTA and any other tax-based revenue streams would be from public money. What we're looking for is private investment from the private developers who are receiving private land and private tax dollar who are receiving public land and public tax dollars for private benefit. And so we're really looking for the and really, again, I'm looking for a win-win, right? Yes, it would be transferred to the ticket holder or to the person parking, but are you suggesting that somehow somebody would not park if you're charging them not $22, but $24, or that they wouldn't come to the Drake concert because the tickets are now not $60, but they're $62?
So I hear you, Marimba, and we're trying to evaluate what the implications are. We do not want to create a competitive disadvantage on public parking. It's already challenging enough to finance privately public parking garages. So we don't want to create another encumbrance on how they work. We're very conscious of that. As I mentioned, the ticket surcharge really is a conversation that I think was just initiated by you and the media last Friday that we're trying to evaluate.
Yeah, the new Granada was agreed to in October 2019. It's in the URA preliminary term sheet, which you were privy to, as well as the entire Pittsburgh Penguins organization. I believe Kevin Acklin signed off on it himself. I would suggest revisiting that because I think that is going to be a critical item for you all to deliver on. So I want to be specific that the new Granada items are not new at all.
Well, hey Craig, you know what I don't understand is how we just went from a parking surcharge to a Live Nation surcharge to a new Granada. And unfortunately what happens is in 2019, we have an agreement with the city where it was a comprehensive agreement on what we would do and what the city wanted us to do to build a parking garage. We're talking about a parking garage that goes along with the office tower that's under construction. As part of that, we're building a new rescue station for the community. As part of that, we're building an incubator space for free. So there are lots of other things that are going on in addition to, I think, what is about 4 million of LRTA and 8 million of parking parking tax that's going to the community. So these are well over $15 million, $20 million from just a parking garage.
Correct.
What's unfortunate,
I've been waiting patiently.
What's unfortunate is that we're trying to build a garage.
Okay,
here,
I would like to get my question.
And the goal line continues
You're next, Reverend. Give me a second.
moved. The goal line continues to get moved. So to attract, we've attracted $250 million to the historic Hill District. We're trying to spend another $100 million, which creates important jobs, wealth building for families in the Hill District and the Black community. And we're trying to build an incubator, and we've already sent $7.18 million to the historic Hill District, which has been sitting in an account for 13 months. The only person that's gotten any dollars is a Hill District RCO. The only person. And so we're trying to release another tens of millions of dollars to this community. No, by the way, this is a global pandemic. Guess how many people are parking in parking garages right now? So at the end of the day, anything we do needs to be economically feasible. I can tell you, I'm going to build gold toilets for everyone in the city of Pittsburgh. But if it's not economically feasible, I can't do it. Look at any parking garage in the city of Pittsburgh. They're empty. So all of a sudden you want to put a surcharge on a parking garage? What bank is ever going to lend $50 million to make that happen? They're not. So what I don't understand is no one has come to us and said, hey, even we want these things. We've just heard about this in the media. So let's just be very clear. There is unfortunately a misinformation campaign that's being spread in the media. I don't know why, but it does make you want to pause and wonder, why would someone do that when she has people who want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into her community, directly into her, hundreds of millions in her community and millions directly in her community?
Excuse me,
Let's just
Mr.
be very
Buccini,
clear
are
about
you
that.
speaking, excuse me, are you speaking to me when you say, why would she want to do that?
I didn't say she, I said, why would someone?
I'm just saying, because if you are, I'd like to respond, but if not, I can let it go, and because there are lots of other people with questions.
Yeah, we have other questions. Yeah.
So let's let others, let others ask their questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please do, please do.
Yeah.
Can we move forward?
Yeah, this is Pastor
Reverend
Snyder.
Snyder.
Yes, three things. We would love to see where Mother Bethel, Big Bethel was located in your development. I know there's 8 other churches, but these 8 other churches not seeking their historic land that we own for 100 years before it was taken by the URA. We were a 3,000 member congregation. Secondly, our request is that we receive some reparations dollars from the building of the parking garage. It's our ax. It's not a demand, it's an ax. And thirdly, you know, you coming into a community and the historical land was not just jazz. It was a melting pot of residents. And now we're not building the same kind of housing that was there for hundreds of years. And it's frustrating for me that every time I hear this conversation, we're building shiny buildings. Our neighborhood don't need shiny buildings. We need low to moderate income housing downtown that is accessible to the people. And if you want to take your $100 million or your $1 billion and go somewhere else, do that. But speak to the needs of the people. And I don't hear enough of that. It's good enough about what you're doing for minority contractors, but who is monitoring what you're reporting? Who is the monitor to make sure that information that you're giving to us is actually valid? I would demand that there be a monitoring contractor or contract with this that's separate from the developers, separate from the Cheney Group, separate from the city, to make sure that what you say you're doing, you are doing. They do that in other cities. And you know, I just want to applaud everyone here who was concerned about our community. I have members of my church who are 94, 95, close to 100, who were displaced. We ain't talking about their second descendants. Bethel was a 3,000 member congregation right across the street from Epiphany. And every time you show your renderings, you put Frankie Pace Park, and you do not even mention Bethel's history that we started in 1809. And it's disrespectful for you to put us in the relationship with the other 8 churches when we have been here to free Black people from slavery. We have been here to give Black people the right to vote. We opened up the first school to teach Black people to read when public education would not allow Black folks to read. We started seminaries and colleges right from our Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, Payne Theological Seminary, where I graduated with my master's and doctorate degree, and we get no recognition and so much disrespect. And so for those of you who don't know who we are, we were moved from the lower hill up to where we're at, to a building 3/3 the size less than where our original church was at. We were given $270,000. Another church given $1.7 million. And what we're asking for is our reparations. We're asking for relationships, and we're asking for a way to fund our pre-development, wherever that may be, so that we can continue doing the work for our community into perpetuity. So you can answer that question online, offline, I don't care. But at some point in the middle, I don't want Bethel's story to be mixed in with everybody else's story. If other churches want to bring that story, welcome to the table. So, and as far as attacking each other, this is community land, and community has a right to demand whatever they want to demand. You have no right to come in and say, you putting in $7 million, it's not your money. And when you talk about the parking surcharge, put the budget up there. If the ticket is $35, say where the $35 is going. $20 going to build the building, $5,000 is going to the venue, or $5 going to, put the budget up in before you say no. And then we can see what the 30, when I went downtown last week, it cost me $20 for 4 hours. So show the budget before you say no. These are requests. And everyone has a right to make a request, whether it's by media, by you. You can't, this is America. All you do is say yes or no at a meeting, but don't demonize somebody because they ask a question or they ask a request from this neighborhood. And this neighborhood has not been developed for 63 years because the people didn't want it redeveloped. This land has not been redeveloped because it has been exploited by white supremacy. There's no reason in the world all this land that should be on the tax roll is not on the tax roll. And so why we stop beating up the residents because they want low to moderate income housing where their grandmother, their great-grandmother, and their aunties and uncles grew up in this neighborhood. And so what we see down in the Lower Hill, we don't see nothing about low to moderate income housing going down there. That's the original history of that land, not the Jazz. The Jazz was up further to Hill. So this young lady called herself a historian. I want you to take pause and slow down and represent the locked out, the left out, the closed out, the people in our community. I just came in 3 years ago, and this neighborhood needs a redress to meet the needs of those who can afford to come to these meetings because they don't have internet, can't afford to come to these meetings because they can't get to the venue because there's no bus route, can't afford to come to a meeting on a Monday at 7 o'clock. And I don't know where all these community meetings been at, but I just encourage you all, we got to do better to meet the needs of our people who have been displaced and disenfranchised to no fault of their own, and stop holding them as the victim. They've been victimized in this. So if you don't want to come and do community work in our community, let it stay vacant for another 63 years. But if you're going to come here, do something for poor people. Members of my church who are still alive, who never understood why you took our church. And you got the unmitigated gall to come in and match us up with other churches, and God knows they deserve their reparations. But Bethel deserves their reparations. $5 million came from the casino. Bethel never got none of that money. Millions of dollars is coming to the neighborhood. Bethel AME Church never got none of that money. We've been here for 216 years fighting for the rights of the people, and we're going to continue to fight. And I want everyone here to recognize Bethel's not going away. We want readdress, we want our reparations, and we want to help everyone who wants to do development in the Lower Hill. But we want the people to be the benefit, because this is public land that should benefit the people and not the developer. And if you come here talking about what you gonna put it ain't your money. It's the bank's money. You get the money financed. And if you want to talk about something, talk about how much profit you gonna make off the project. It's $240 million. How much you gonna make? And then if you're gonna put your profit into the project, that's more honorable. But if the community say they want more, give the community what they want. And if you can't meet the needs of the community, then maybe we need another development. Maybe we need to take the development rights away from the Penguins. We need someone who's going to meet the needs of poor people, because that's what this community is. We don't need it to turn into a squirrel hill. We need to turn into a community that's going to respect poor people who work hard, $12,000+ the median income. And if that's not the focus of what you're doing, if you can't find a model that meet that need, then what are we really doing? Gentrifying a community, the oldest Black community in Pittsburgh, to build a sports arena, to build another playground for white folks and Black folks to come and play, while our folks can't even survive every day. So I'm telling you, 5 or 6 jobs is good, but I'm just saying to all of you, we need a monitor on this project, to not the DRP, not all of these folks that's been in place, but a private monitor to verify everything that y'all say y'all do. I want to see somebody go and talk to the $24 million you say you gave the Black contractors. I want them to come to a private meeting to make sure they get
Reverend
paid.
Snyder,
And I'm
Reverend
done.
Snyder, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your passion. This is Bomani House. I would gladly sit with you and anyone else to walk through any of those numbers, how we reported, who we reported to. As I said earlier, it's public, it's not private. It's sent to on a monthly basis to the EMC. It's an overarching committee. It's representative community groups. It's representative of the Penns, the mayor's office. We also send a monthly report to the Sports Exhibition Authority, who also has Hill District residents on that board. We also send it to the Urban Redevelopment Authority, who has the leadership of Councilman Lavelle. It is widely distributed. And if you and I can get offline, I can send it to you as well. And then we can walk through each and every item This is a very different
I would
concept.
gladly do that. But if you can show on the screen for everybody that's here now, so they can
Absolutely.
understand where historical Bethel sat and understand why our conversation is so vital. I think that's important and urgent that you show that. It offends me. I don't know who the young lady is that they named the park after, but Bethel was like, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet from there, maybe 100 feet. Bethel was not even mentioned in the park. We're not even mentioned. And we were there for 100 years before they took our property. We bought this property after the grapevine Pittsburgh. And we're not even mentioned in the conversation.
Right
now,
on,
we're trying to do some readdress, but I'll gladly meet with anyone. We are aggressively, we're building partnership. We want to find a win-win for everyone. But I'm tired of Bethel's story not being told. We struggle. We're an international church. We helped slavery end across this country. We had the first statewide civil rights movement in the state of Pennsylvania at Bethel in the 1800s. We were targeted for destruction. So I just want you to understand the difference in these other churches. So don't put us in the same category. And I hope you understand my passion, and we can work. I want to create a win-win for the people in the Hill District, which I pastor, and which the Hill Bethel AME Church have been the soul and the eyes of that community for 216 years.
Reverend Snyder, I thank you. This is Bomani House. I thank you.
All right,
I appreciate
my
your
contact
passion.
number, and we're willing to work with anybody that want to work with truth and create some opportunity for people, and primarily for my members who are still alive in their 90s. I want them to have some glory going back to him, because they never understood why they took their church, and they want their development rights back, their land back, and an opportunity for development to get a chance to develop like the Buccini Group. We want to get a $10 lot that we own, that we can develop, that we can have the same opportunity, Buccini, a young man, I don't know your name, I apologize. We want the same opportunity that you got. And maybe we can partner, we can create a relationship, a win-win, but we should have the same opportunity to get a block of land where our property stood for $10 just like everybody else, because nobody in this whole development has any more historical record on that land than Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. No one in this development. And we have not received a dime, not one penny from the development. All right.
Respectfully, Reverend Snyder, we need, tonight is simply about.
I understand, but it's the last public meeting from what I was told. So I'm sorry.
No, we'll have many more.
Yesterday.
We'll have many more. For clarity, it was the Urban Redevelopment Authority, and I think that's the direct point that those concerns, although there are other people who want reparations as well. We've been fighting for this for a very long time. So again, I want to thank you for your passion and all of your points made. There are some other folks from the community that also have some questions. I see Bonnie's hand is raised, and Brother Randy
We'll
Taylor,
actually be
and then also
taking
some folks
questions from the Q&A tool first, and then we will move on to those whose hands are raised.
Thank you.
Also want to just note that we do have a handful of committee members. I don't want them to leave before they get their questions answered, who came out to watch at the Blakey Center. So please don't forget that Hill CDC hand represents a lot of people in an actual room waiting to ask questions.
Absolutely, and they are in order. So another question is, can a community garden be added to the lower hill?
Can you repeat the question, Ose?
Can a community garden be added to the lower hill?
That's a great idea. As we get into further stages of the open space planning, we can include that in our conversations.
And next question, in Frankie May Pace Park, there's a sign that was made for those who march for low-income housing in the lower hill. Can you use that sign when you build low-income housing? Renee, would you like to elaborate on your question here?
That was my
Yes.
question. I'll put it in.
Okay.
I noticed, can they hear me now?
Yeah.
I noticed that they had put a sign that back in the days, our people who came before us and our ancestors had carried the sign and wanted the sign for low-income housing on the lower hill. I noticed they put it in the park that they built, but are they gonna put low-income housing in the lower hill like the ancestors asked?
Make a request for me that they give us hard
Who-
copies.
Whose question is that? Was that Renee?
I said.
That was Renee.
That was
Hi,
Renee.
Renee. Hi, Renee. So, although tonight's conversation is about the garage and the Live Nation venue, our commitment to housing still stands. To honor the commitments that we previously had still stands. So we're not going backwards, we're going forward, and
Right, but
definitely.
So are you saying that you are committed to making low-income housing in the lower hill?
Yes, absolutely.
I have a question, a follow-up, just a fact check on this. There is no housing contract that I am aware of as a member of the Executive Management Committee in place with Buccini Polling Group, between Buccini Polling Group and PAR. Has that changed? If not, I mean, if it has changed, when did it change? And why hasn't that been disclosed to the Executive Management Committee or the community?
There hasn't been any housing agreement put on the table.
Okay, so then how are you making a commitment to low-income housing?
What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is that, and this is me speaking from my community hat, also from my developer hat, very deeply entrenched, involved in the residential aspect of it. While we are not there yet, we will continue to stay committed to low-income housing.
But who's
affordable
we,
housing.
Bomani? Who's we?
Do we have a protocol and an
we-
order for the questions?
I'm
Because it
just-
seems to
I'm
me that
just
some
following
people
up.
are taking the mic when it's not their turn.
Who's we, Bomani?
So,
The lower hill development.
Can we have questions asked in order? Could we have
So-
questions asked in the order that Osei talked about,
That's fair.
rather than
Yes, Bonnie.
random
Please.
questions?
So Bonnie, I want to ask you a question. So my question I want to ask you is that being a Black developer and you look around the room and you see all these people that look like you and me, and everything is still the same. Everything is proceeding still the same. And that this was a 40-year plan from 40 years ago. I'm talking about the hill, not just down on the bottom, but I'm addressing you because you want to be a developer, right? So why don't
That's right.
they take all those jobs that they're training those people to do? You become the developer, we get a plot of land that's ours, right? So that we don't have to be mixed, included, shuffled with these people who've been raping us all our lives. Because it's still the same. It's not gonna change. 80% of our youth is incarcerated. That's not just some figure I just came up with. I was part of that as a youth. So I'm trying to say is that the hill looks the way it looks because it's by design. You understand? We had some politicians that was in there that was selling us out at that time to make it what it is today. So what you see today is what they created in order for them to come back and take it. So by them taking it, we should have some place on the hill that's our own plot, and developers like you should come along and teach some of us how to be developers, take some of those jobs they learned from down there off that lower hill, take those workers, bring them up here. We all have somewhere to go, send somebody to school to learn how to do, you know, trades that got to do with developing like management, you know what I mean? So we know how to take care of ourselves, build our own warehouse or build something that we can all work for, and then we can have our own self-sufficiency. And then they can have the rest of it because we got our own to give our children. We don't have nothing to give our children. And when they get done, they're not putting nothing in writing. They're not giving you nothing in writing. You're not putting nothing in writing. And how many times have they went back on treaties and promises and all of that? You can just look at Robinson Court. You can look at over there on Bentley. They go back on.
What's your name, bro?
And you can't even get back in here.
What's your name, bro?
My name is Sherman, yeah.
So Sherman, I agree with your sentiments, and actually that is happening. You do
That's
have,
clear.
let me show you.
Okay,
You do
so,
have developments in the Hill, in the greater Hill, that are led and owned by Black developers. Probably the most notable one is the old Elmore that was built by KBK, a Black man from the Hill.
I agree to disagree, because I've been asking this
You want me
man.
to answer your
Oh,
question?
wait, I
You want
just want to say one thing.
You asked me a question, I gave you the
Yes,
floor.
sir, yes, sir. No, I'm gonna let you
Respectfully,
answer.
let me answer. So that's
I'm
one
gonna let you
example.
answer. I'm gonna let
That's
you
one
answer.
example. There's a lot of work also being done by the Shinley Heights Collaborative in partnership
Right.
with PHDC
Right.
and the Neighborhood Allies. Those are Black-led organizations, Black
Okay.
ownership of
Okay.
properties in the Upper Hill. And then we can't forget what's being done right now on Center Avenue, led by Marimba Lions in the Hill CDC with New Granada Apartment, a Black-led organization. And
Right.
so this is happening not just in the Lower Hill, and it's happening in the Middle and the Upper Hill as well. Those are just 3 examples. And on the Lower Hill, there's not going to be any retreat on that. This is our land too. So we're going to
Okay,
build,
so,
and it'll
okay,
be.
so you answered my question. So now I'm gonna ask you this, right? So as those 3 developments are there, right? What do we have in writing to say they're gonna still be there? What do we have in writing to say that as this thing goes on right there, that they're not gonna build all around in some other situations that's gonna overpower that? And that's not even gonna be there.
Well, I mean, you being here tonight is an example of how we collectively get involved to make sure that our community turns out the way that we want it to be. If we unite, we stay united, we can build a strong community that is ours.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So what if they change in the AMI to the point where you can't afford to stay and you have to go?
So the AMI,
Yes,
term is
the
referring
AMI, that's
to
the
is-
most important part of development. If it's 80%, and just like the Reverend said, it's 12,000 and it's at 80%, how are we supposed to be able to stay?
So when we say the AMI, let me just make it clear. The AMI is the area median income.
No doubt,
right?
that's what it's based on.
Right. And so the area median income at 80, it's not just 80, it's 80, 70, and 60. So
No, sir, there's no more 60. No, sir, there's none of them. There's no more 60.
We're not gonna argue. We're just gonna answer
That's
questions.
not, we
You ask
not, we
questions.
talking, but I just want
And
to
I'm
let you know
answering.
there's no more 60, so you shouldn't.
You're wrong. That's
false
wrong.
information.
You're wrong.
The stuff being built is 80.
All right, you're wrong. But if you want to get
Wrong?
offline and
Okay.
talk about it, we can talk about it. I'll
Okay,
get
my
your
man.
number from, if you post your number in the chat, I'll call you and we can talk about it directly.
I
I want to
appreciate
answer
it.
some more questions. I appreciate your questions and your time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're actually going to move to Randall Taylor.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Reverend Snyder said a lot of things that needed to be said. I do believe, first of all, that we had the same, I'm the ROC for the Hill District Consensus Group. And one of the things, our mission is to not only house our people and to bring people back who were displaced involuntarily from the Hill, we're also working to try to keep many of our particular seniors who want to stay in their homes, but have so many badly needed repairs that they don't have dollars for. And so I think it's legitimate to ask the developers to lend their own dollars. I served for 12 years on the Pittsburgh School Board. I'm very well versed in tax breaks and things like that. And I don't really consider that a contribution to the community when those were taxes that had to be paid. And I just don't consider that as contributing to the community. It's a good thing that it's happening, that those tax dollars are diverted to something in the community. But I think it is. And the $1 or the tax on cars is really close to, I believe, a 10-year proposal that's been on the table for that. And also, again, surcharges on tickets. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking these developers to actually put some dollars to help this community execute some of the dreams that they have, because the community in this city has delivered to you something very, very valuable, and that is city land in the middle of really downtown, in the middle of a growing city. And so finally, I'd like to more speak to us. I do think that we should take some leadership, particularly some of the organized community groups that are on this call, to really try to sit down and really try to really speak with one voice. And I don't really think that that's happening right now. But I also think one of the fatal flaws, and I've been working for the consensus group close to 90 days now, and that's probably good, like Reverend Snyder, that those are more fresher eyes on the situation. And I would say one of the major flaws that have occurred was the committees as they've been constituted, I don't think represent fully the community and giving voice to the community. And so whether it's the executive committee where the names are flashed on the screen earlier, or the committee that is overseeing the dollars, the $7 million that's been put into that fund. I think that fund is too top heavy with elected officials. I think, again, that's a fatal flaw to have an elected official as the chair. I'm a former elected official, and we should always be providing opportunities for leadership for other people. We try to guide people, but the main thing that I think is a solution to all this is to bring more democracy and transparency into the situation and to allow more people to the table and give more people an opportunity in the decision-making process. And I happen to believe that is not going to be harmful, because I really do think all of us want the same things for the Hill District. And I think that we all come together, sit around the table, we can certainly come up with some solutions, but that would be, hopefully we can convene a meeting of community groups first and then take further out to the community. And I do think that we can come together and speak as one voice. And I think that's critically important at this time.
I agree. And I'm willing to come together anytime. We've been at this work since 2005, and we've had our ups and downs, our ins and outs, but unity is the best way forward. So I agree. Oh, let me just also say with the EMC, it's not elected official top heavy, and actually they're the only elected official on the EMC is our Councilman Lavelle. There is an appointment from Mayor Gainey's office, Jake Pollock, but the rest are not elected officials.
But I probably was talking about where the $7 million, 7 point some million dollars I think that committee particularly needs to have more democracy, less elected officials in position, and more community residents and more community voices at that table, even allowing community members to actually vote who should be the decision makers. But I think as that was originally constituted, I think a couple people made decisions on who would be a part of that committee. And that's, again, is always going to be a flaw. And sometimes it could be a fatal flaw where any decisions don't have the credibility in the community's eyes that they should. So I'm speaking really about both of them.
Randall, I just have to provide some facts here a little bit. What happened with the LERTA committee was the people who stood up to fight for the original fund that was created at the Poise Foundation, the original battle to secure funding for the community for the casino funding. There was a committee put together based on the people who stood up and fought, okay, at that time. We wanted to put the LERTA money into the Poise Foundation, but at the time, the elected officials weren't comfortable with it being held at the Poise Foundation, so they required that it be held at the URA. And so essentially the committee that managed the Poise Foundation that secured the casino funding was largely duplicated to manage the LERTA fund. Good, bad, or the ugly, I just want you to understand the how and the why. And the elected officials, by the way, are ex officio non-voting. You should
understand that. But remember, that committee was formed, I believe, close to 10 years ago. There are new people now here. There's new organizations that come on the scene, new priorities now, and even more of a sense of urgency about that we have to make our moves to make the community before it's too late.
Yeah, so I agree. Always new people.
So
open it up to new and different voices, because in the past 10 years, new and different voices have come into the Hill District, like Reverend Dr. Dale Snyder.
Well, Randall, as a part of, as one of the older persons and the person actually responsible for winning the campaign against the casino and making sure that Don Barton actually won and contributed that money and contributed $3 million. I want to be very clear that I voted along with 4 other people, I believe, to give $1 million to the Hill CDC so that the Hill CDC could be a strong organization, so that the Hill CDC could actually defend our community, so that the Hill CDC could foster development within our community. And you're right, it was more than 10 years ago, actually. So there's been a lot that has happened. And the idea was, well, the Hill Growth Fund, the Hill Growth Fund is now the LERTA committee. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. There's a lot of shenanigans going on in our community. And I'm glad that everybody's paying attention. I'm glad everybody's here. We need to have a meeting where we discuss the transparency. We need to have a meeting where we discuss who got money, when and why and how and for whom. Where has the majority of the money gone to? Why is our neighborhood still half vacant? Why is Center Avenue development so slow? When we got that money so many years ago, there is still $1 million of the Hill Growth Fund money sitting at the Poise Foundation. Why hasn't the Poise Foundation released that? Because of what happened with the Hill Growth Fund. So we need to talk about that. So thank you. I mean, there's issues around transparency and democracy with the Development Review Panel. There's issues around transparency and democracy with the demands that are being made. So what exactly, like if you're speaking on behalf of the community, then what exactly is your individual request? I can't say that I'm here, I'm speaking on behalf of the community, and then I slide in my individual requests. And then I don't tell the community what I'm asking for. I say I'm fighting for the whole community. That's what's happening here. I need everybody to know that this is being woken up today and it's never going to go to sleep again. And for Pastor Snyder, FYI, yes, I am a historian and I did address Bethel. And Bethel is literally written into the history of the wall around Martin Delany, because Martin Delany walked from West Virginia to Pittsburgh to be the apprentice for Reverend Lewis Woodson, who was a pastor at Bethel AME Church. That is documented and it is there. Thank you.
I want to ask that we redirect. There's some folks who have been patiently waiting to with their hands raised, and I want to give respect to them and allow them to ask us questions. And I'm hoping that we can continue to refocus on the presentation tonight, which is about Block E, the Live Nation venue, and also the garage.
All right, so we are going to attempt to conclude this meeting at 9:30 due to time constraints. So I just wanted to provide that information to all attendees. I will attempt to, Deborah Williams, did you still want to speak? I know you put your hand down earlier because you were said that you were going to be provided the opportunity to speak.
No, I'm kind of listening and hearing all the questions that I was gonna say. So no, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to take one question from the Hill CDC, a few questions from the Hill CDC group, and then move over into our panelists.
Okay. Hi, Tim Stevens. I just wanted to thank everyone for their contributions tonight on sharing a lot of detailed information. And one of my concerns that I have as a guy who grew up on Wiley Avenue down the street, and our headquarters is here in the Hill, the VPAP part of the Freedom Unlimited building, the Alma Speed Fox building, my church, represented by Reverend Dr. Dell Snyder from Bethel AME Church and formerly Trinity. I'm hopeful, because of some of the remarks that were made tonight, that everyone will step back for a moment and figure out how those different perceptions can be resolved in a positive manner that progresses the Black community of the Hill District, and that any negatives be handled in a positive manner. I know that's easier said than done, but I also know, Bomani, that years ago when I sat in some of the meetings led by the Hill Consensus Group and the Hill CDC, I think we all ought to all pay great respect to the work that's been done for quite a number of years. It's a lot of work that we need to find a way to not damage any of the good that has been done and that is being done. And that where there is a broken bridge, that the bridges be rebuilt. Secondly, though, because of those years that I sat in and listened to some of these meetings, Bomani, one of the big asks that I always heard was low to moderate income. And it seemed like in your answer tonight to one of the speakers here in this room, it seemed like that was an answer that you did not have a definitive response to. And that's been
not true.
I didn't, maybe it was the way I heard it. You said that, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It said that you said you had a commitment to continue that commitment, but there was no specificity to it.
Right, and the reason why.
At least I didn't hear it.
Okay, so let me make this clear for everyone. So I'll say again, tonight's presentation is really just about one block. We have several blocks. Last year was Block G. This year, we're pushing for Block E, which is the Live Nation and parking garage. That's what tonight's presentation was about. And so my response to it was an answer that comes out of us not being there yet. We haven't had these conversations in any detail about housing. It's just not there. We haven't been going through the numbers that we once did when I was a part of Entergen. And so I don't want anyone to be confused in thinking that the details around housing have been ironed out and they just haven't been presented. That is not the case at all. I don't deliver that way. When we are at a place where we can bring forth some details on housing, we're going to do that. We're going to be as transparent as we have been. That's not going to change. And so I know that the most iconic project on the Lower Hill is around housing because our folks been displaced. I'm not removed from that, but I promise you, my word is bond, that when we get to the housing portion of this site, it's going to be open and transparent. It's going to have community involvement. And we're going to make sure that we build the type of housing that we'll be able to feel good about. So let me just reiterate, tonight's conversation is around one block. We can't talk about, we can, but we got to focus. We can't deliver it all at one time. And so if you would please just give us some time to get to the housing portion. Tonight's conversation is simply about the Live Nation venue and the garage.
Yeah.
Hey, Bomani, can I just interject? Hey, Bomani, can I finish your thought? To answer your question.
I just need to say, Chris,
and
that
Bomani, what I wanted to say was
just one at a time, please.
Yeah.
One at a time.
I'm just finishing. I'm just finishing, Bomani. As your partner, I wanted to just sort of like add something as well. Development is iterative and it takes time. What Bomani and our team has accomplished in the last 2 years, there may not be anything in America like this and in the middle of a global pandemic. So it takes armies of people to do this. And so Bomani and the team's work is that started with the FMB Tower. That was the anchor. That was the biggest project. It allowed to create infrastructure, capacity building. It let us figure out what we could do right. And it let us learn what we made mistakes, right? And how do you learn from that? And so the residential, Bomani spoke to it, the residential will come. It's just, there's only so much you can do. There hasn't been a private project of this size done in Pittsburgh in decades, so it's coming.
I just have to say, I have to, because I can't allow anybody to mislead.
Can we
community
follow the
members.
order?
Kim,
Can
I
we
mean,
follow the order
Bomani,
without people dominating the conversation?
Bonnie, I'm just trying to fact check
Let
this.
other people speak, please.
I
Let other
just am
people
trying to
speak.
fact check this particular point.
Let other people
This
speak,
is not
man.
your presentation.
Okay, Bonnie, you go. RB, you go. Hill CDC, you go.
It's
And
not
then I
for
will
you
go.
to say who goes.
But-
It's
but
for
the-
okay to say
okay.
who goes. 'cause
Wait a
it's their
minute.
meeting.
Wait a minute. Can we just find order?
Yeah, you
here?
all
I
don't have
wanna
the
allow this
context,
person-
and so perhaps you're not as
Wait a minute.
appalled. But the
Can we
reality
allow
is that
the
the reality
additional
is that
CDC?
Could
VPG
you
does not
stop,
have a
Marimba?
contract.
It's unacceptable.
Excuse me, I have a question about Block E. Can I just ask the question and go home? Because I do
There have
take a
been,
diabetic shot.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Marsha Harvey. I'm the president of MD Harvey and Associates. And my question is about that parking garage. It's only 900 spots. You know, and I know more than 900 people go to the Penguins game. So my question is this: in order to benefit the Lower Hill District residents who are sick and tired of people from the Penguins and musical events blocking up their street parking, once this garage is built, how about we charge folks $50 every time they park on our Lower Hill streets, and that money goes to Hill District CDC to improve the quality of the living in our neighborhood. How about that? That's a suggestion. That's a question. Y'all can take it any way y'all like, but I'm going home now because I don't want to pass out in this place. I'm tired. Have a good night.
I'm a person who is physically here.
are we only taking questions from one?
This
room?
isn't a question, this is a request.
Comments?
Well, Belmonte, because the community members have engaged in one room
It's not
and
one
may
room.
not engage in the future, it is one room.
Can
We
I-
are allowing them to do it.
Can I make a
No.
request? Since we did come out to be here, can you please provide us hard copies of your visuals on the screen? You know that
What's
you're
your
gonna have,
name and what organization?
I'm a citizen. I'm one of
Yes,
those
ma'am.
old heads that are still alive and would like to see my community restored.
Come on.
My name is Junietta Seal. I can do forensic accounting if I can read the numbers. So I request, if I'm coming out in person to sit in a room and be given Doritos, please provide me with a hard copy of your visual aids. Thank you.
Can somehow, can you make sure that Osei gets your contact information, please, so we can get that to you?
You all have had my contact information for 75 years. If I write my email address on anything else and get 50 million political solicitations again.
Or a contact number, I can call you.
By the
as
way,
well.
we don't get any money from the printing of all the junk mail that I get. So
How
if
would
I'm
you like us to
coming out
get the
again,
information to you?
Just send it to all the RCOs. And the RCO.
My-
will be
my
able to
name-
get it there.
Tell them to send it to the
Okay.
CDC, we'll bill them out. Tell them.
Well, can you provide your number or name and we'll
my
ensure that
name,
somebody-
my name is, listen, my name is
So-
Jetta
Spell it.
Jelks, Jelks, my maiden name, Seal, Seale.
And Bomani, hey, Ms. Seal, it's great to see you. Ms. Junietta is a member of Arts and HD, so you can find her very easily. We'll be in touch with you, sis, and we'll
And
be
I
in
wanna
touch with
tell you-
everybody.
Can I tell you where else you can find me? In the streets every day, tutoring and mentoring homeless people. Someone made a statement that they have $7 million sitting in an account for a year. That was preceded by an organization that is providing food and clothing and housing for the underserved. And they're struggling to get $3 million. Do the math. What kind of ratio and proportions is that? You're boasting about $7 million and one building, a renovation of a building, can't come up with $3 to $5 million to do what we should all be doing as a community. So stop throwing all those billions of dollars here and putting things out of context. Go back to basic math.
There you go.
Thank you. Now, I'm gonna tell you where else you can find me. I'm ambassador for Carnegie Library, District 9, serving 2 libraries and 9 communities, which I moved with a walker that is broken on the streets. I have 3 wheels on my walker that works. Because I'm on 7 buses a day, I overhear comments. I see people struggling to put money in the toll box, holding a child in her arm and a child in the other arm. 275. She's probably riding as many buses as I am, and every time struggling to put $2.75 in there for herself and her kids. So she doesn't have access. When I asked about disrupting while they're under construction, where are those people going to go? And how are they going to get the money to get to where they need to go? So we need to go down to giving people, I wish someone had said, instead of a parking garage, you give out $7 all-day passes. That would help a whole lot of people today. Not next year, today. Well, please call me because I'm gonna tell you who I really am, okay?
I will.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Ms. Hills, I think, yeah, wait, Bonnie was actually ahead of you, Barbie.
Okay. I'm just gonna make it real brief and defer to other people, but I think a lot of questions tonight have been about the LRTA, about the availability of those funds. I think we've heard a lot of reasons why people need the funds. And I think we hear a lot of frustration about not getting access to those funds, some of which is directed appropriately and some of which isn't. And so I think there needs to be a community discussion about how those funds actually get released to the community, who has gotten money, and what the process is for the release of those funds. The CSIP says that the process for release of the funds is supposed to be available 6 months after the funds have been made available. We are a year beyond that, and they still are not there. And we need to have a community conversation about that so that we can hold the correct parties accountable.
Okay, so I agree with that. This is Arby Bankston, Hill District Consensus Group. So I'm going back to the city planning meeting of May 4th, 2021, their minutes. And item 6 says each application to be accompanied by a dashboard reporting back on the terms that have been agreed to date, and also reporting on any additional progress on other terms that have been discussed between the community and the development team. Can you speak to that, please?
What specifically, Harvey?
It's item 6 of the City Planning Commission meetings from May 4th, 2021. You guys are supposed to have a dashboard that shows how you're in compliance with all the things that you said that you're going to do. And I haven't seen any evidence of that. The community would like to see evidence of that. Okay. The next thing, there was a comment about the EMC and the CSIP. The EMC and the CSIP doesn't have a procedure that I know of and has never released minutes publicly. So please, however, somebody is saying that they're supposed to inform the community, that has not happened. The next thing. So I want to talk about the CSIP. So the CSIP was signed in 2014, and it has 5 signatures. And one of the signatures is Mr. Travis Williams on behalf of the Pittsburgh Area Real Estate Development Limited Partnership. Pittsburgh Area Real Estate Redevelopment. So that's the CSIP was signed by one of your representatives. So on page 24 is where it talks about $1 per car. You've heard many examples of why that money is needed. And the money that's been deposited in the LRTA, which apparently, I heard someone say that the Hill CDC got $300,000 of the 7.5 million. So the thing that is important is that the community residents need that money. So that $1 per car surcharge is important.
and it's been in the CCIP since 2014, and it was signed by a PAR representative. So I'm really trying to understand how it was a surprise to you guys that you didn't know that if you had read the CCIP in advance. So how we need that money to rebuild the hill, and that's going to take a decade. And the $7.5 million from Block G1 and the $4 million from Block E is not, that's a drop in the bucket. It's not going to work. And I understand debt service ratios and things of that nature and the pandemic and all those things and the challenges. I understand all that. And they are valid concerns and I agree with them. But I also agree with Reverend Snyder and I also agree with Randall and the other people that have spoken. There has to be a win-win. You can't have a Black community without a strong Black church. You can't have Black business without Black residents. If that was the case, the church would be robust and Center Avenue would be booming, and it's not. So that's common sense. So we need to be able to come to an agreement. That dollar per car surcharge does not come out of your pocket, and the community needs it badly. It's going to take a decade to rebuild the hill. Okay. So another thing that was mentioned was Ammons. So in October 2019, put up a slide down at the URA saying the estimated contribution was going to be $1 million for Ammon rehab. Where is that? How is that going? So there's a lot of questions. From your May 3rd, 2021, an open letter to the Hill District community, historic Hill District community, there's several things in there. One thing is, just last week, F&B has committed to investing an additional $5 million in funding towards closing gap funding for real estate projects in the Hill District. How is that going? People want to know what is that, so forth and so on. Okay, the development team is committed to raising $5 million Opportunity Zone Fund for direct investment in real estate projects in the Hill District to offset impact of gentrification. Further committed to engaging with the Hill District on potential investments from the fund that will benefit the neighborhood. People want answers. These are all publicly available documents, and I'm not trying to be adversarial. But the hill needs to be rebuilt. It's a historic neighborhood, and it's in danger of no longer remaining a predominantly Black neighborhood. Okay, so we need answers, and some of the things that have been said, there's some inconsistencies, but we need to work together. There needs to be a round table where we all sit down together and come up with a win. Bethel needs to win. The Hill District needs to win. The residents in the Hill need to win. The developer needs to win. The project on the lower hill is important because the city needs it for the tax revenue. The city is broke. Okay, that ARP money is keeping us afloat, and there's only so much that we can do. So the median income of people on the hill is $22,000. So at $15 an hour, which is 31.2, two people making $15 an hour, which would be 62.4, could not afford to buy a new home on the hill because the new homes are being built at $300 plus per square foot. So there's a lot of imbalance here that needs to be addressed. Block B was presented to the DRP. I'm a member of the DRP. And that no longer is in existence, and that had some affordable housing on the Lower Hill development. Housing is needed.
What's not in existence, RB?
Block B. Block B is no longer Block B. Block B was presented in January of 2020 before the pandemic. So all I'm saying is that if you look at the overall picture, we're falling short. And the community wants answers, and there are answers available, but they're not being utilized. The $1 per car surcharge is important. Answers to some of the questions resulting from the open letter to the historic Hill District community need to be answered. You have the minutes from the Planning Commission, supposed to have a dashboard. Each application be accompanied by a dashboard reporting back on the terms that have been agreed to date. Nobody knows anything. There's no transparency, and people are frustrated. So we need more commitment, more things in writing, and less things in less verbal, because nobody is trusting all the verbal.
Okay, Arby, let's allow them to answer. We are moving towards the 9:30 mark and there are still people who have questions. Can someone from the Lower Hill answer his questions?
Okay, so one of the first questions was around compliance. Boris, can you speak to the compliance obligations that we've stayed committed to?
Sure, Bomani. And Arby, thank you for your question. And certainly our commitment is to respond back on the status of kind of the full and comprehensive list of questions that you brought out in your question. But you started your question specifically about the dashboard and what the status is of that. That dashboard is part of our final land development plan for Block E. It was submitted to the CSIP EMC back in July, and we've certainly put it in writing, an update on all of those commitments, and it's a critical element within this effort to bring the Block E project back in front of the Planning Commission. So it sounds like you haven't seen it, but it would be very straightforward of us and very easy for us to share that with you, and we're committed to making sure you get that very, very quickly.
Thank you, Boris.
Okay. Gil?
Thank you. So in the presentation that we started this meeting with, there were a few questions that came out of the meeting that we had on October 3rd that still weren't addressed. So there were questions around housing, which the majority of the call was spent on because it's the most important issue in the neighborhood. So since the rest of the call was really focused on housing, I have another question that came from that meeting that I think should be addressed. So there was no mention of sustainability in the presentation, and you're located next to the Energy Innovation Center. And so in regards to sustainability, I want to know, would you be open to investigating, working with the Hill District nonprofit to act on some of the incentives provided in the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 related to sustainability to allow a Hill District nonprofit to achieve that residual income that could come from that?
Craig, can you take on the question regarding sustainable development elements?
Sure. Thank you, Gil. We've actually been working with Duquesne Light Company Smart Grid Group. We've got a team of folks that have put a request for proposal for solar inclusion in the project. We're looking at different vehicles to optimize building performance, both in the venue and in the garage. So all of those are targets that we're trying to follow. The Inflation Reduction Act has created a new landscape with credits and incentives to improve building performance. And just digesting that as a design and construction team right now to figure out the most optimum ways to make these buildings perform. And we've been looking for a long time at different ways that the EIC and its expertise, really around energy, can participate in the projects that we're doing. So very much, Gil, on our radar.
Yeah, how about the second part of the question?
Community group? Yeah, there's a lot of avenues right now for community solar or community energy production or distribution. We're trying to understand that landscape right now.
Right, so just so I could ask the question again, would you be willing to investigate working with a Hill District nonprofit to act on incentives that are made available in the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 so that a Hill District nonprofit can gain residual income from the project?
I think so. I'd like more about it. I think we all would.
That's good to hear. Let's set it up. We can have all RCOs there. Let's set it up.
Or it could just go into the reinvestment fund.
Okay, we have one final question since we are at
That no one
9:30.
can access.
Oh, from Latrice Johnson, who's had her hand raised. So you are able to unmute, and this is our final question for the evening. If you have any additional questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will ensure that they are directed to the Lower Hill Group.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Latrice Johnson. I'm a third generation Hillian. I was displaced from Burrell Street and I had to move to the north side. But my grandfather had the first speakeasy in the same place that Kaylee Roy Irvis is. He lived on Bentley Drive. My mother is Yvonne F. Brown. She is a community advocate and has been my whole life. She's fought for the whole entire city of Pittsburgh, especially the Hill, which she refuses to leave. And a lot of the things that are going on now, the redevelopment is what she's fought for. And I'm asking a question for her, but I just want to give a little history about what we have here in the Hill and what we've come from. I moved away for 12 years to better my life after I was displaced. And I came back to take care of my parents, my mother and my father, here, still here in the Hill District, both at Kaylee Roy Irvis building. I started a business for myself and I named that business in homage of the Hill District. The community with my mother helped me grow to be the woman I am, and my business is Hill District International. And that was because that I see it being no other place than the Hill. This is how I feel about my community. I want to build generational wealth for my family. I have grandkids to bring them back to the Hill. And I want to speak from my age group. I'm 51. When I moved back, there were so many people that said to me, friends, family, that I've known forever on the Hill, because every time I come back to my community. I tell them I moved back. Why did you move back? Every single person, why did you move back? There's nothing here. I can't wait to go. I wish I could go. And even in the Hill District, even with the building that's being built for next to the Black Beauty, at first I just thought it was a building being built like all the other apartments down Fifth Avenue. And I didn't know it was for us. And the people that I communicate with, which are still in the Hill District, the residents that I grew up with, they say, you know, that building, yeah, it's for us for now because that's on paper. But, you know, when all the media is gone, it's not for us. So my issue is, and it's not really an issue, I hope all this comes to fruition, because I purposely named my business after the Hill because it cannot be anywhere else. It can't be in East Liberty. It can't be on the north side because it's named the Hill District. But I just want to say from my age group, there's a lot of my age group that don't believe in this. And I believe that's the reason that they're not coming to meetings and they're not voicing their opinion, because they feel as though that this is not for us. But my question is, for my mother, she's not available to talk, but she made sure that she wanted me to ask you, as she's been saying at City Council, which she still goes to twice a week, she's concerned about the buses from Kaylee Roy Irvis for the seniors to get down to these things that you're doing for them, like the shopping center or down to the hospital. In order for them to get a bus, they have to go all the way through town in order to just go to a doctor's appointment. So her thing is, with all this redevelopment that you're doing, is there going to be accommodations for the seniors at Kaylee Roy Irvis to be able to catch a bus to get down to Oakland, to Fifth Avenue, I'm sorry, down to Fifth Avenue to get a bus, or even down the center without having to go all the way through town just to get back home? That's my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Latrice. Craig, can you touch on the transportation studies and plans?
Yeah, I think that the Pittsburgh Regional Transit has a service that runs right up through the site on Wiley and stops at Crawford. We can certainly, in discussions with them and on behalf and with the community about route adjustments. That was the question I just heard that I think was being asked.
It was, and I appreciate that. And she will, like I said, she speaks at City Council twice a week. This is a issue that she spoke about many times and not gotten a direct answer that you gave me. But if there is any type of discussions that can be made, she'll definitely be involved. And so I thank you so much.
Latrice, I will also put you in contact with your planner at the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, and they can better connect you with PRT.
Thank you so much.
Hey, OC, I got a quick question for the development team. Can we get a commitment to have a discussion about the $1 per car surcharge? It's in the CSIP since 2014. It was put forth by Carl Redwood of the Hill District Consensus Group back then, and about Ammon Center Rehab. Can we get a commitment to have a discussion about those two things?
Yes, we can absolutely discuss that.
So RB, you don't want to push for the $2 surcharge? You want to reduce it?
Right now, the $1 is in the CSIP.
Okay.
So, let's do with the CSIP instead of complying with the CSIP when it's convenient. And if we can go to $2, if it is feasible through the discussions, then yes.
Note that the Hill CDC does not agree with that, but I'm willing to participate in conversations.
Okay, RB, I think they said.
You appreciate it, OC. I just want to tell you on behalf of everybody, you appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we can all agree on that for sure. Thank you so much.
RB, thanks so much for your question. And I think that this, honestly, this represents like what happens in our community, right? So you sign an agreement, and then, I don't know, last Friday, right? Then suddenly there's a co-opting. This Carl Redwood has been talking about $1 per car before 2014. We all know it. Those of us who have been in meeting after meeting after meeting for the last 20 plus years have heard this same thing. Councilman Lavelle actually worked on that idea of $1 per car and passed legislation. It turned into taxing literally the Pittsburgh Penguins for their lots. That is how this originated. And then the next section is what we now are referring to, parking tax diversion. So I think that, like, I think it was Randall, and I think RB, you may have said this as well, that like, oh, these ideas aren't being communicated to the community, right? And so, I mean, just ask yourself, you've seen the Hill CDC newsletters. Have you ever seen any of the ideas that we talked about tonight in any Hill CDC newsletter?
No.
Like, if you're a collaborator, if you are a partner, the CSIP is about partnership, collaboration. And if you have that, if you're not being informed by the community representatives, that is on purpose. So I just want you to be very clear about what's happening here, because there is a misinformation campaign happening, and we are trying to present facts, possibilities, and explore ideas. But we can't do that well, I'll say. But I mean, we are doing it well, but we can't do it like those of us who truly care about the community, those of us who really, really care about individual people's lives, those of us who care about the fact that Edna Council was at the last meeting on October 3rd, and Edna Council is 91 years old. Those of us who care about the fact that at the last community meeting, Marlene Ellis was there, and Marlene is 86 years old. She was sitting next to a friend who was 90 years old. I don't want to be 90 years old coming to a community meeting. I should be resting in my elderliness. I should have a fireplace where kids are sitting around and I'm telling stories about the beauty of the neighborhood and the different things that have happened. I don't know about you, Arby, but I have been volunteering for 25 years in the community on this committee and that committee and this committee and providing this history and providing this information. And you think that something is happening and then you look up and there's kind of only one person, only one group benefiting and then nothing else is happening. It's not right. So when it comes to us having a meeting, let's go ahead and have that meeting. These series.
All right, listen, I want to stop us here. I want to thank everyone on behalf of the Lower Hill Development Team. I want to thank all of our partners, everybody here at this table, for all of your commitment. You've been involved for decades and the struggle still continues. This is just about Block E.
Carol's
and there will
hand
be
is
more
up, though.
block presentations to come.
Carol's
We're
hand
at
is up, though.
9:42.
Can we just, I'm
Sure.
sorry, Bomani. I know
I
that
just wanna-
Carol's hand is up. We need,
Sure.
this is one of several meetings that we're gonna have. And by the way, I'm Karen Abramson, Director of City Planning. We just want to make sure that we are honoring people's time at this point because it is almost 10 o'clock. There will be additional meetings around the Lower Hill, as you know, additional development activities meetings. And I'm also assuming that you were all meeting with the developers and each other outside of these particular meetings. So I hope that we'll figure out another way to do this, that we are honoring people's time when we have these dams. This is the first one I think we've done in this format. And I think that, you know, we've tried to give everybody a chance to speak. And it is getting close to 4 hours on this call, on this particular meeting. So I'm hoping that we can just end it here. And then obviously we'll reconvene, but hopefully you'll all figure out, the RCOs will figure out a way to work outside of these meetings with these questions that you're asking. You're asking great questions, but they should not only be in these formats. I hope that you all can convene at another time. So with that,
I appreciate that, Karen.
Bonnie, listen.
No, I appreciate that, Karen, but I think you have to really control your time where people are participating and taking whole half hours to speak. I think you really do have to control that because then other people cannot ask their questions. That is not fair. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I've been here since the very beginning, and there are things that are gonna probably change, but they're not gonna happen now. And we can be on this meeting, I'm sure, for the next 2 hours.
No one wants that, Karen.
So Osei, I'm going to let you say the last word. I just want to just basically end this now. Again, we will probably be up here again, meeting, whether it's virtual or in person. This isn't the first meeting. You're going to have others. So I'm going to give Osei the last word. Please respect Osei's last words, please. And we will continue this, I'm sure, another time. Thank you all for standing around this long. It's been a long meeting. Appreciate everybody's comments, seriously. Thank you. Osei, please.
Sure. Thank you, Director Abrams. So these presentations will be available after this meeting, as well as the recording for those who would like to rewatch or share with those who are unable to attend. We will also provide all of the RCOs, of course, not only the presentation, but the reports for each of these projects. And if you have any additional questions or your questions were not answered, Dr. Kim Ellis did provide information in the chat so that you can reach out to members of the Lower Hill Development Group. And also you can reach out to myself. I will put my information in the chat as well. And again, thank you for attending tonight's development activities meeting, and you have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, be well.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank y'all. Good night.
Thank you very much. I look forward to more meetings and more information. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
All right.